Roman slave owner. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 101 Sertorius. Okay, you lead the way. Levi thought for a moment and said. He followed the cavalrymen with some guards and soon came to Sulla. At this time, Sulla and some generals were sitting under several olive trees without any moral integrity. In addition to Pompey, Delibola and others, there was also an older man, Metellus, the former governor of Gaul in the mountains. In the past, because he was restraining Scipio, Levi had never seen him. Would you like some? Pompey raised a wine glass and said, okay, a little to moisten my throat. Levi also sat on the ground and said. One of Pompey's personal soldiers poured him a glass of wine, and Levi drank it all. It tastes very good, Levi praised. If you want, I'll give you a few bottles, Pompey said. Okay, no problem, Levi said. He knew that if he always let others owe him favors, others would be unhappy, so he agreed. At this time, Sulla said loudly, okay, everyone is almost here. Let's discuss the next plan. How do you think we should fight Scipio? Of course we will fight. We have so many legions to destroy him directly, Delibola said. I agree. Levi raised his glass. He really deserves to be Delibola. It suits his taste. It would be best to kill him in the chaos. He dared to covet his sugar formula. I think we should surround his camp and then part of the army will march to Rome, someone said. Rome has already recruited new legions and has been training for a while. Even if they arrive, they can't take Rome, Delibola retorted. Listening to the endless debate among the crowd, Sulla did not speak immediately. Metellus also kept silent. Only the lieutenants were arguing, and occasionally Levi would interrupt. Seeing that everyone was deadlocked, Sulla stopped them from speaking. Don't you have any other ideas? Sulla asked. Levi's heart moved. What do you think about persuading them to surrender? Persuading them to surrender? Everyone was stunned for a moment, and then someone burst into laughter. That was Scipio. Was he crazy? How could the descendant of a god of war family surrender? Levi spread his hands. He knew it was like this. The truth was always in the hands of a few people. Scipio is very good at using troops. How could he surrender easily? Metellus said dissatisfiedly. He was indeed a young man with no experience. Then what do you think we should do? Levi retorted bluntly. Metellus was about to speak, but Sulla stopped him. Sulla looked at Levi in surprise. Can you tell me why you have such an idea? Guess, Levi said shamelessly. Some people couldn't help laughing. Levi looked at them with a sneer. You guys just laugh. I hope you can find out next. Do any of you know Scipio? Sulla asked at this time. The scene immediately became quiet. They looked at each other. Some shook their heads. Some thought deeply. Even Metellus was no exception. He and Scipio were old friends, and they had a deep friendship. At this time, he thought about Sulla's meaning. We should not just fight hard battles, but analyze what kind of people our enemies are. We need to find their weaknesses, Sulla said. Then find a way to win without fighting, Levi said. Win without fighting? That's a good saying. Sulla's eyes lit up, and then he asked, who said that? Levi's mouth twitched. It seems to be said by an Oriental military strategist. I don't remember clearly. Sulla looked at him with admiration, and continued, as far as I know, Scipio values family above all else. Do you think we can win this battle? Of course we will win. Levi spoke first. That's right. From the expedition to Greece to now, I have never been defeated. If I tell Scipio that he dares to go against me, when we win, I will uproot the Scipio family. What do you think Scipio will do? Sulla said domineeringly. Well, will he remain neutral? Someone said at this time. If it was a foreign war, the Scipio family would never have such worries, and of course they would fight to the death. But this is a civil war, and there will be no honor if they win. If they lose, the family will be extinct. Scipio may remain neutral. Everyone looked at Levi with a strange look on their faces. How did he guess this? Levi showed a mysterious smile on his face. You don't understand the power of the prophet, so I decided to persuade him to surrender. Sulla said, I support your decision. Someone said, I support it too. Levi looked at him with contempt. A group of flatterers. But we can't persuade him to surrender right away. Otherwise he will definitely turn his face on the spot. We have to take it slowly. We will send someone to negotiate first and find a way to shake their military morale. Levi, I need some of your sugar and liquor, Sulla said. This. No problem, Levi said with a painful look on his face. I was already poor, and you kept asking for money. Sulla looked at him speechlessly. Is it necessary to be like this? Isn't it just some sugar and liquor? But giving money is absolutely impossible. Sulla is also short of money. In the military camp outside the city of Tyre, Scipio looked outside the military camp with a frown. Ever since Livy defected, countless people have scolded him. It was he and Nias who guaranteed Livy and helped him get through the difficult times. As a result, Livy really defected to Sulla and caused extremely heavy losses to the Roman army. If it weren't for the fact that their Scipio family's power was deeply rooted in Rome and he was still the consul, he might have been taken down long ago. It is said that Nias and Perker and several other senators are being investigated by the Roman Senate. If nothing unexpected happens, they are really in trouble. At this moment, there was a sound of footsteps not far away. Scipio looked back and found that his son Nasica and a one-eyed man were coming over. The one-eyed man was the Grand Chancellor Sertorius. In Rome, the Grand Chancellor could lead troops, and Sertorius was also a famous general in Roman history. After Sulla's victory, he fled to Spain and fought against many Roman generals alone. Even with Rome's almost unlimited support, it took Pompey, Metellus and other generals 5 years to quell the war in Spain. Moreover, this war cannot be considered to have been quelled by Pompey and others, because Sertorius was killed by his men at a banquet, and then those people surrendered voluntarily. Otherwise, it is unknown when the war would have ended. This shows how strong this brother's military talent is, and he is also one of the designated recipients of Livius's sword. Father, something big has happened. Sulla's army has moved towards us, Nasica said anxiously. Chapter 102 Peace Talks. How many troops did they send out? Scipio asked. It is very likely that there are more than 11 legions, and the number of cavalry is no less than 6,000, Sertorius said with a sullen face. Hearing this, Scipio felt dizzy. Now his army is only 6 legions, and the number of enemies is almost twice his. How can he fight? Because of Leo's defection, Sulla's strength has skyrocketed much more than in history, and the gap with Scipio has completely opened up. Didn't the Lucanians and Samnites say they would send troops? What are they doing? Scipio couldn't help but roared. They said that Sulla has at least 4 legions watching them, and they can't move, Sertorius said dissatisfiedly. And then wait until we lose to Sulla and then go to die? Scipio couldn't help but sneer. They knew the thoughts of the Lucanians and Samnites. They were timid and wanted to wait for them and Sulla to lose both and then come out to pick up the bargain. But is it that good? Since the defeat of Capua, the morale of his army has been extremely low. How can he fight like this? What should we do? That's 11 legions. Why don't we retreat first? Nasica frowned and said, we must not retreat. Rome is behind us. As long as we hold on here, they can't do anything to us, Sertorius said angrily. He didn't expect Nasica to be so useless that he would retreat without even fighting. What if they dig the earth and build walls to surround our city, and then attack Rome with their main force? Nasica counterattacked unceremoniously. This is a very common combat method in Rome. When encountering a strong city, the Roman army will dig the earth outside the city to build trenches and walls, and then surround the city for a long time. In the late Ming dynasty, the later Jin also used this method to deal with the Ming dynasty. Don't worry, by then, the new Roman legion will have been formed, and we don't have to be afraid of them at all, Sertorius sneered. Nobanus has returned to Rome to form a new legion. When passing by here, he scolded Scipio harshly. The Lucanians and Samnites will definitely send troops. Sulla will not allow such supporters of Marius to exist, Sertorius said. Look, what is that? Said a soldier nearby. Scipio and the others looked over and found a team of more than 30 cavalrymen approaching slowly. Who are they? Asked Nasica. No one could answer his question. When the envoys of this team came to the front of the city wall, a cavalryman quickly revealed their identities. They were Sulla's special envoys, and they came to negotiate peace on Sulla's orders. Hearing this, Scipio, Nasica and the others looked at each other in bewilderment. What did they mean? After entering the city, Hadrianus explained his intentions, and he waited for their decision with great respect. Do you have any conspiracy to negotiate with us at this time? Nasica couldn't help asking. General Sulla admires the Scipio family very much and doesn't want the two sides to fight. Now that the culprits Marius and Sulla are dead, General Sulla thinks there is no need to let Rome suffer from war again, Hadrianus said. Scipio and Nasica were very excited. The one who hated Sulla the most was Marius, followed by Cinna and Carpo. It was they who organized the army and took advantage of Sulla's expedition to the east to capture Rome. Of course, there was also Sertorius. In fact, they did not have any deep hatred with Sulla. If Sulla could negotiate with Rome, no matter what Sulla planned, it would not harm them. No, I will never agree, Sertorius said angrily. This is definitely Sulla's conspiracy. How many relatives and friends of Sulla and his generals were killed by us? How can such a blood feud be easily abandoned? Sulla must have other ideas. This is a blood feud between you, and it has nothing to do with us, Scipio and his son added in their hearts almost at the same time. Okay, you can go down. Let's discuss this matter first, Scipio said to Hadrianus, and at the same time ordered someone to arrange his food and accommodation. Looking at Scipio and his son, who seemed calm on the surface, Sertorius did not dare to be careless. Scipio was a cunning old man, and he might be sold out by him at any time. Scipio, we must not agree to his request. This must be Sulla's conspiracy, Sertorius said. Whether it is a conspiracy or not, we have to make contact, and we need time. We can pretend to negotiate. When winter comes, they will naturally retreat. By then, the new Roman legions will have been successfully trained, Scipio said with a smile. Sertorius said in his heart, MMP, this is actually a good delaying strategy, but he didn't trust this unreliable father and son. Let's discuss how to negotiate. I think the best way is to delay. If it really can't be delayed, we can propose some conditions that they can't accept, Scipio said. At this time, he thought of a bastard who made him extremely embarrassed. Should he let him be a hostage? This is where you live. We will collect your weapons and horses for you first, and return them to you when we return. You'd better not run around these days. It would be bad if you cause any misunderstandings and are caught as spies. A centurion placed these cavalrymen in several dormitories in the barracks, and then said to them coldly, We understand, we will never run around, please rest assured. Hadrianus said with a smile. After the centurion left, Hadrianus and the others settled down, looking at the guards outside the door. Their faces were a little solemn. In addition to conveying the intention of peace talks, they also have a special mission. However, they are always skeptical about whether the special mission can succeed. At noon, some soldiers came here with a lot of food, but soon there was a commotion inside. Bah! What is this? It's so disgusting. Why don't you even add sugar to this porridge? Do you look down on us? Where's the wine? Why isn't there even a drop of wine? Hearing the voice inside, the centurion walked in with a gloomy face. What's going on? I don't know. They think the food is not tasty, a soldier said innocently. Why is your bread so unpalatable? Can't you add some sugar to it? And wine. We want good wine, the kind in Levi's hotel, or at least Greek wine. The cavalrymen were making a fuss, and seeing this, the centurion sneered. Can these poor guys afford sugar? Not to mention them, even he couldn't afford it. Chapter 103 Temptation. More than 30 dinars per pound, equivalent to his monthly salary. As for the wine of the Levi family, what is that? Is it better than the imported Greek wine? Just when he was about to scold, a centurion took out a bag and threw it on the table. The mouth of the bag was a little loose, revealing the crystal-clear white sugar inside. I know you can't afford white sugar. I have some white sugar here. You can use it first. We will never eat your garbage, the centurion said. How is this possible? A centurion casually took out a bag of white sugar. The centurion picked up the bag in doubt and weighed it. It was about 7 or 8 pounds, which meant that this bag was more than 200 dinars. He took some white sugar and put it in his mouth. It's so sweet. It's really as delicious as the legend. Take these down and make bread for them, the centurion said. This. How to do it? The soldier holding the bag of white sugar stammered. The centurion's face frowns. Yes, how can this thing be made into bread? Ha ha ha, ha ha ha. Hadrianus' men laughed unscrupulously, and even Hadrianus smiled. This soldier is so cute. What a bunch of poor guys. You can't even make bread with sugar. You are still working for others like this. Even if you work hard, can't you sell yourself more valuable? All kinds of extremely vicious ridicule came out of their mouths. The soldier was so angry that his face turned red. He clenched his hands, but finally forced himself to hold back. Looking at the centurion's increasingly dark face, Hadrianus said, "Enough, don't say any more." The guard shut up. "I'm very sorry, they are all outspoken. I apologize to you on their behalf." Hadrianus said, "Are you sure you are apologizing? Not giving us a 10,000 point critical hit?" The centurion thought angrily. "Please accept this as a token of humility." Hadrianus took out a kettle and handed it to the soldier. "What is this?" the soldier asked. "The fine wine of the Levi family, called grape brandy. This wine is very expensive, at least 50 dinars, Hadrianus said. "So expensive?" the soldier said in shock. He took off the water plug and a strong aroma of wine came to his nose. How could it be so fragrant? Wine can't be so fragrant anyway. "Thank you," the soldier said very sincerely. "This kettle of wine is worth his 5 months' salary. If he can earn so much money by being scolded a few times, he would rather be scolded every day and every moment." "Marcus, you go and teach them how to make bread with sugar," Hadrianus said. "Yes, sir." A soldier followed the soldiers and left here. The centurion was about to leave, but was stopped by Hadrianus. "Would you like to have a drink together?" Hadrianus said, shaking a wine flask that he had taken out from nowhere. The centurion was about to refuse, but after smelling the alluring aroma of the wine, he agreed. "No problem." The centurion ordered someone to bring wine glasses and snacks, and sat down with Hadrianus to drink together. Good wine, really good wine. After drinking a glass of brandy, the centurion couldn't help but praise. "Compared with those wines, this wine tastes stronger and more mellow." "Of course it's good wine. This wine is the latest famous wine brewed by Levi, and even General Sulla likes to drink it," Hadrianus said. "What's your name?" "Azilius, centurion under Consul Scipio." "Hadrianus, captain of the cavalry of General Sulla's personal guard." After the Battle of Capua, Hadrianus was finally promoted. He added a lot of sugar to Azilius's porridge, and then said, "Stir the porridge to dissolve the sugar, it will taste better." Azilius did not refuse. After stirring for a while, he took a sip and found it was indeed very sweet. "Do you all eat like this?" Azilius asked curiously. "I've only been doing this recently. I made a lot of money in Greece before. When we conquered a city that resisted us, the consul let us live in the homes of rich people and asked them to pay us a month's salary every day as a punishment for them. I lived in a wine merchant's house for several months," Hadrianus said. "In addition, we conquered many cities and robbed some money. General Sulla also rewarded a lot of money. I probably have less than 10,000 dinars now." Azilius was envious. They were both centurions. So why was he so rich while he was so poor? If they couldn't win the battle, they would not only not make money, but they might even lose their lives. After returning to Rome, General Levi allowed us to buy sugar and spirits at half price as our welfare, but unfortunately there was a quota limit and we couldn't buy too much. Otherwise, I would have 20,000 dinars after the war. Hadrianus continued. Azilius was even more stimulated. 20,000 dinars, this money was too easy to make. "Look, we made so much money following General Sulla. And what about you? You can't even afford a little good food." "If it were me, I would have quit long ago," Hadrianus said. Azilius knew that he was provoking, but he felt very uncomfortable. Now Sulla has won battle after battle and is powerful, but Scipio doesn't seem to have a good future. "Come, drink this glass," Hadrianus said. "I have some other wine. I'll give you a bottle later." Hadrianus knew that this matter could not be rushed, so he did not continue to persuade. "What kind of wine?" "Whiskey, a kind of wine made from grain." "No, I only like wine made from grapes, Acilius said. Although he liked strong liquor very much, his self-esteem did not allow him to accept expensive gifts from the enemy. If you don't want other wines, it's fine, but you'd better accept this kind of wine. This kind of wine is very good for treating wounds. Applying this wine on the wound after being injured can greatly reduce the chance of wound suppuration, Hadrianus said. There is such a good thing? Acilius said in surprise. Yes, Nobanus wanted to promote it throughout the army, but it was not implemented because of a defeat, Hadrianus said. Then I won't be polite, Acilius said. As a warrior, he certainly knew how precious this kind of thing was. Dignity is not as important as this kind of thing. Maybe it can save his life someday. Not long after, bread with white sugar was delivered. Eating the sweet bread, Acilius was a little crazy. There was such a delicious food in the world. Thank you very much for the reward from book friend 2017092916453258. Chapter 104 Hostages. After Acilius left, Hadrianus winked at his men, and they left here and chatted with the soldiers nearby. They talked about how much money they made during the expedition to Greece and how rich they were now. Occasionally, they invited them to drink some wine, which made the soldiers very envious. But Scipio knew nothing about it. Scipio kept dragging it out and didn't see Hadrianus for several days. Hadrianus was very angry. Although he had a special mission to use them, he had to go back and report as soon as possible and couldn't stay here all the time. In the end, he kept blocking the entrance of Scipio's camp. Scipio had no choice but to meet him. I can negotiate with you, but there are two conditions, Scipio said with a smile. At this time, Sulla had already set up his camp not far from Scipio's camp. Since the two sides were in the peace talks, the soldiers of both sides did not fight when they met outside. After a while, they actually started chatting. At Sulla's instruction, Sulla's soldiers boasted about how rich they were and how much they had gained from fighting, which made the Roman soldiers envious. With the spread of the news, and the testimony of Hadrianus and others, the news that Sulla's soldiers were very rich spread quickly. In contrast, Scipio's soldiers were extremely poor, which made Scipio's army unstable. Livius was happy to hear about this, and perhaps soon, Scipio's men would surrender on their own initiative. On this day, Sulla summoned all the generals to discuss matters again, and Livius hurried to Sulla's tent. Scipio agrees to peace talks, but we must send hostages? After learning the news from Hadrianus, Sulla frowned and looked at Livius. He actually wanted to repeat his record in Greece. After making peace with the king of Pontus, Sulla persuaded the Roman army that went to conquer him to surrender without a battle. If he succeeds, he can step on the Scipio family to ascend to power, and his light will shine throughout the Mediterranean. I think there is no problem. We can send Hadrianus and the hostages to Scipio. But I think there will be people who disagree with the peace talks. They will try every means to sabotage the peace talks. At that time, we can take the opportunity to ask for the return of the hostages. Levi said. He said that you must be among the hostages. Hadrianus smiled and said, Numa asked me to do dangerous things. You try it instead. Levi's face was dull. He pondered for a long time, and then said seriously, I think this plan has too many loopholes. Let's just scrap it and fight. What do you think, Pompey? Sulla, Metellus. Everyone was stunned. Where is the moral integrity? So soon, Pompey. Ahem. I agree with Levi. Levi controls 3 legions. I firmly oppose letting Levi be a hostage. Good brother, loyal, worthy of giving you a famous sword. Levi secretly praised. Who do you think will disrupt the peace talks? Sulla asked. Sertorius. Levi thought for a moment and said. A cold light flashed in Sulla's eyes. When attacking Rome, Sertorius had made a lot of efforts and was the one he wanted to kill. That makes sense, Sulla said with a sullen face. Since Levi doesn't want to be a hostage, let Faustus go. Hearing this, everyone was shocked. Absolutely not. We must not send Faustus. We can send others, but Faustus must not be sent as a hostage. Levi said hurriedly. Who is Faustus? He is Sulla's biological son. Levi didn't expect Sulla to send his own son as a hostage. People who can accomplish great things in history are indeed extraordinary. Yes, we must not send Faustus. Everyone persuaded. Scipio is a cunning old man. He will only think of delaying until winter, and then we will naturally retreat. Sulla said, so we have to make some changes to the plan. I know Scipio's deputy general Catiline very well. He is a very greedy person. He borrowed a lot of high-interest loans and could not pay them back. As long as we promise to help him pay off his debts and give him some benefits, he has a great chance to surrender to us. Hearing this, Levi fell into deep thought. It was really unreliable for him to rely entirely on history. And is Scipio really cowardly and incompetent? How could so many people all make mistakes? Could he have other considerations, such as the continuation of the family? Why not send your nephew over? Don't you have a nephew named Publius? Levi said. Now he can only choose the lesser of two evils. Instead of letting Sulla's son go, it is better to let his nephew go. Sulla's heart moved. Yes, why didn't he think of his nephew? Who of you is willing to go as a hostage? Levi turned around and looked at Laberius and Bullus, the commanders of the 2 legions under his command. Laberius and Bullus looked bitter. Boss, why do you ask us to clean up your shit? You should have said it earlier. There are so many troubles. They looked at each other, and finally Laberius stepped forward. I'll go as a hostage. Levi nodded with satisfaction, and then said, I think it's high enough to have your nephew and a lieutenant as hostages. If he still refuses, we have to doubt his sincerity. Add one more person. I served in my father's camp with Catiline. He has a good relationship with my slave Demetrius. Pompey said at this time. How about your slave? Sulla asked. He is talented, eloquent, and a genius. If it weren't for his status as a slave, his achievements might not be worse than mine, Pompey said with a wry smile. Everyone was surprised. They didn't expect there was such a talent. Sulla's eyes flickered, and he finally nodded. Let's do it this way. So Hadrianus went to Scipio's camp again to discuss the conditions with Scipio, while Scipio continued to use the delaying method. At this time, Levi called Sulla and many other generals to come over and let them visit the killer weapon he prepared for Scipio. Everyone, this is the siege machine I prepared for Scipio. The full name is the counterweight trebuchet. As long as dozens of such trebuchets are built, it will be easy to capture Scipio's camp. Levi pointed to a tall trebuchet and said, this is actually the Hui cannon in history. The principle is very simple, that is, to use the counterweight stone to greatly increase the speed of the thrown object. The principle is very simple, and it is a real siege weapon. In history, Rome also had its own attack weapon, the spring-torque trebuchet. But unfortunately that was a matter of the Roman Empire era, and it is still uncertain now. Chapter 105 Gift of Sword. Everyone was shocked to see this 3-person high trebuchet. They all knew the principle of levers. After all, Archimedes was a Greek. Using the counterweight of the stone to exert a greater force. Why didn't I think of it before? Someone suddenly realized, yes, such a simple principle. We didn't even think of it. How come this stone is more than 200 pounds? The deputy generals were shocked. They touched the counterweight trebuchet with a smile on their faces. If they had this kind of trebuchet, they could attack those strong cities however they wanted. Very good, very good. How heavy is this stone? Sulla also pointed at the huge stone that was about to be thrown and said with a shocked face. He found that Livius was simply a treasure trove, always taking out something out of the blue, which shocked everyone. For example, sugar, alcohol, swords, and this time it was a trebuchet. 450 Roman pounds. Livius gritted his teeth and said, this is a great gift for Scipio. How far can it be thrown? We'll know if we just give it a try. Who's going to start hammering? Levi said, holding a big hammer. Let me do it. Dolorabella took the initiative to say, be careful. It might be dangerous. Levi said, it's okay. This thing is so big. I like it. Dolorabella said with a smile. He took the hammer from Levi, walked to the side of the catapult, and according to the instructions of a soldier, smashed it hard at a certain place. With a whoosh, the huge stone flew into the sky in the distance, and stopped only after falling 300 meters, and then kept rolling. Everyone walked forward and found that the huge stone had smashed a nearly 2-meter deep pit on the ground. Seeing this, everyone was shocked. What a powerful trebuchet. With this trebuchet, it will be easy to take down Theron. Forget about Theron. Even Rome can't defend against this kind of trebuchet. Everyone said in shock, and looked at Levi with a strange look. This guy is really a petty person. Hearing that Scipio just offended this guy took out such a powerful trebuchet to deal with Scipio. It seems that you should be careful when dealing with him in the future. Transfer all the craftsmen of the legions to me. In no more than 7 days, I will build 100 trebuchets for you, Levi said confidently. Sulla was excited for a while, but soon he thought of a question. What about the stones? Levi was speechless for a while. It really takes a lot of time to get a large amount of more than 100 kilograms of stone, and even needs to be transported from other places. I think it's a two-handed preparation. I will assign half of the craftsmen to you. Build 50 trebuchets for me in 7 days, and the rest will go to mine stones. Do you think there is any problem? Sulla said. Guarantee to complete the task, Levi said. Sertorius was writing a letter carefully. Sulla sent an envoy to discuss the peace talks again. Scipio wanted to drag it out, but he found that Sulla was making a lot of siege equipment. He knew he couldn't fool him, so he agreed to the hostages sent by the other party. But he really didn't trust Scipio. This guy was too ambiguous with Sulla, and his relationship with the Metellus family was extraordinary. Even if Sulla won, Scipio would be fine. For now, he had to report the matter to Rome. Lord Carpo and Marius would never let this matter slide towards the direction of peace talks. Take more people and send this letter to Carpo and Marius. Remember to hand it to them in person and say that the matter is extremely urgent. Carpo sealed the letter and handed it to a centurion under his command and said, "Yes, sir." The centurion said. He was relieved when he saw the centurion leave here with dozens of cavalrymen. Just as he was about to leave, he found a cavalry coming from afar. Wasn't that the enemy's peace negotiation team? He wanted to see what tricks they were playing. Sertorius sneered and stayed. Not long after, the cavalry arrived at the military camp. "Excuse me, are you the Grand Judge Sertorius?" a cavalryman asked at this time. "Yes. Who among you is the hostage sent by Sulla?" Sertorius asked. According to Roman law, the Grand Judge has the right to command the army, and Sertorius is the Grand Judge who commands the army. "I am Liberius, the commander of the 2nd Legion of Capua. Lord Levi asked me to bring you a famous sword worth 1,000,000 dinars, saying that you deserve this sword." At this time, a young man in a red cloak sat on horseback, captain of the 2nd Legion of Capua. Sertorius was surprised. He didn't expect that the other party would send people of such a position as hostages, but didn't care much about the famous sword. "This famous sword can cut iron like mud. General Sulla and Pompey both wear this kind of sword," Liberius said with envy. He had been coveting this kind of sword for a long time, but he knew that he probably couldn't afford it in his lifetime. Sulla and Pompey. Only then did Sertorius become a little interested. Sulla is not to be mentioned. Pompey is also a new and powerful general. He defeated the 3 major Roman legions in a row and is now famous. Liberius took out the sword reluctantly. Sertorius took it and took a look at it. It was shining with cold light and there were fine cloud patterns on the sword. "You can take out your sword and chomp it against this sword, and you will know how sharp this sword is," Liberius said sourly. Sertorius snorted coldly. "If you say chop, I will chop. How embarrassing it would be for me." "Take out your sword," Sertorius said to a centurion. The centurion took out his short sword and Sertorius chopped it down with a sword. Ding! The sword in the centurion's hand was cut in half. Looking at the broken sword in his hand, both Sertorius and the others were stunned. "What a good sword! Good sword! It is indeed a good sword." Sertorius couldn't help but praise. He took out his short sword and chopped it down with this one. His short sword was cut in half at once. Sertorius couldn't help laughing. Unlike some politicians such as Scipio, he was a real general who was proud of his bravery. For this reason, he was often proud of his one eye because he was blinded on the battlefield. "I like this sword very much." "Why did he give it to me?" Sertorius asked. "Lord Levi believes that only the strongest generals in the world are worthy of this sword. Lord Levi has taken this sword off the shelf and no longer sells it. It is only given to those who deserve it," Liberius said. "So he thinks I am a famous general at the same level as Pompey and Sulla." Sertorius' eyes lit up. "Yes, that's what he said," Liberius said. Chapter 106 Cat Line. "Yes, that's what he said," Liberius said. "Humphrey, what kind of famous general is he?" "How can he be compared with my uncle, At this time, a young man snorted coldly. "Who is he?" Sertorius asked coldly. "Publius Sulla, the nephew of General Sulla," Liberius said. Sertorius snorted coldly. "Sulla was really cruel. He even sent his relatives." It seems that he was very sincere in the negotiation. "By the way, didn't he give a sword to Consul Scipio?" Sertorius asked. "No," Liberius said. Sertorius couldn't help but ponder. Scipio was the descendant of the god of war family and was well versed in military affairs. Levi gave him a sword but not Scipio. What does this mean? Is it to sow discord? Sertorius didn't know how much he would achieve in the future. At least now he thought he was not as good as Scipio. After thinking for a long time, he couldn't figure it out, so he could only give up this question. After the hostages arrived at the military camp, Scipio did not meet them immediately, but delayed for a few days on the grounds of being busy with official duties. Liberius and his men were not in a hurry, but kept in contact with the soldiers, inviting them to eat and drink from time to time, and giving them some things from time to time, which made the soldiers full of good feelings towards them. They were all soldiers. Why was there such a big difference between the soldiers? Others ate sweet bread made of sugar, while they ate coarse bread with no taste. Others drank fine wine and made a lot of money, but they drank inferior wine. Not only did they not make money, they might even be captured and even lose their Roman citizenship. In fact, their lies were easy to expose, but the book The Crowd tells us, the more people there are, the lower their IQ is. This is the reason why a lie repeated 1,000 times becomes the truth. When the news spread more and more, people believed it. The morale of the Roman soldiers in the military camp became even lower, and some were even indignant. In fact, the senior officials in the military camp had already discovered this situation. Apart from reprimanding, they had no other way. Because the news had spread, no matter how they tried to stop it, they could not. In the early morning, Catiline was handling official business when a soldier walked in. "Sir, the hostage sent by Sulla brought you a gift, saying that it was sent to you by General Sulla." "Only to me?" Catiline asked with a frown. "No, it is said that many people sent it." "That's good. Let them in." Catiline thought for a while and said. Not long after, some soldiers came in carrying some boxes, and a centurion smiled and said, "Lieutenant General Catiline, this is a gift from Sulla to you. I hope you can smile." "Demetrius, is that you?" Catiline said in surprise. He looked at the soldiers around him warily. Fortunately they were all his confidants. He asked those soldiers to retreat, leaving only Demetrius. "Why are you here?" Catiline asked. "I came to see you, to see if you are the Catiline I know." The arrogant noble Catiline actually worked for the plebeians. "When I first heard about it, I thought I had misheard," Demetrius said unceremoniously while sitting on a chair. Catiline snorted coldly. In fact, he was just a poor noble, but the poorer he was, the more he valued his noble identity. He always looked down on the plebeians. "Who gave you the courage?" "A slave is so presumptuous in front of a noble." Catiline slammed the table and said, "Don't talk nonsense. I tell you the truth. This place is about to end. If you don't want to die, you'd better surrender to General Sulla quickly. This way you can save your life." Demetrius said fearlessly. "Don't talk big here. Scipio has 6 legions. It's as difficult as climbing to the sky to break through here." Catiline said with a sneer. "I'm not kidding. Levi invented a powerful catapult that can throw 450 pounds of stone to 200 Roman steps. It's very scary. Not to mention the military camp. Even Rome can't stop this catapult." Demetrius said. "That's impossible. Throwing 450 pounds of stone to 200 steps? Don't lie to me here." Catiline would not believe such nonsense. "I'm very serious. This thing is top secret. I'm telling you at the risk of my life. If the peace talks fail, General Sulla will order an attack on your military camp, and no one can save you at that time." Demetrius said seriously. "Are you kidding?" "No kidding." Catiline was silent. Although Demetrius was a slave, he was very capable and good at making money. He managed Pompey's property. It was because Catiline was a down-and-out nobleman that he knew the value of money. He once proposed to buy Demetrius, but unfortunately Pompey refused him. and he knew that Demetrius was a man who valued credibility and never lied. This was his golden signboard. Could it be that what he said was true? General Sulla now has 14 legions and nearly 10,000 cavalrymen. He is invincible and has occupied the entire central Italy. He is not far from Rome. Who do you think can stop General Sulla? You, or Scipio, or Sertorius, who accepted the sword from Levi? At this point, Demetrius laughed a few times, as if he felt that it was an insult to them to compare Sertorius with Sulla and Pompey. Your morale is low, and the soldiers have no intention of fighting. Many people in Rome want to negotiate. How can you stop General Sulla's army? Or do you still want to work for those civilians? Demetrius said with disdain. Enough, Catiline said with a cold face. Lord Sulla said that as long as you are willing to surrender to him, all your debts will be forgiven, and he can also appoint you as the governor of a province. What do you think? Demetrius said. Hearing this, Catiline was very interested. It was not easy to be an official. He had to borrow money constantly to please the people. He had been in debt for a long time and was almost crushed by these debts. If he could become the governor of a province, he would make a lot of money. Which province? It has not been decided yet. It depends on your performance. Demetrius said. Okay, I agree, Catiline said. So straightforward? Demetrius was surprised. Humphrey, I will not work for those civilians. I will never die, Catiline said viciously. Demetrius sighed lightly. Prejudice. Deep-rooted class prejudice. Soon after the hostages arrived, they spread the news that Sulla had created a powerful slingshot and the military camp could not withstand the attack of such a slingshot. Although many people did not believe it, the morale of the army was still wavering. As a famous general, Sertorius grasped this restlessness and knew that he could not go on like this. Although Scipio's peace policy seemed good, the peace talks could happen at any time, which was not in his interest. Chapter 107 Ambush. On this day, he finally received a reply from Rome. After seeing the reply, he finally breathed a sigh of relief. Someone endorsed his actions, and he could finally destroy the peace talks with confidence. Thinking of this, he called his adjutant and asked him to gather his troops. Not long after, a fully equipped Roman legion, led by Sertorius, left the garrison and walked towards the gate of the barracks. What are you doing? Looking at the mighty army, the military tribune guarding the gate asked in horror. Mind your own business and open the door quickly. Sertorius was not a good-tempered person. His long military career made him extremely irritable. I will never open the door without the order of the consul, the military tribune insisted. Sertorius waved his hand, and someone immediately stepped forward, drove away the military tribune and his men, and then opened the gate, and the mighty army left the barracks. Tell the consul that I'm going to attack the city of Lycia. Before leaving, Sertorius told Scipio his goal for fear of causing misunderstanding. After learning the news, the military tribune did not dare to neglect it and reported the news to Scipio on Pegasus. Lycia, isn't that a small town that supports Sulla? It seems that Sertorius wants to disrupt the peace talks. Thinking of this, Scipio had a headache. Should we send someone to chase him back? Nasica asked. Forget it. He has made up his mind to go. Can you force him to come back with a sword? Scipio said, hoping that Sulla would not be furious after suffering a loss. However, he took the opportunity to send the hostages away. These hostages were really disgusting. They were promoting how good it was to follow Sulla every day, which made their military morale unstable. He wanted to get rid of them a long time ago. In fact, Livius had been monitoring the movements of the military camp. Although the craftsmen were building counterweight trebuchets, the army had been idle. After learning that someone led a legion out of the city, he immediately walked towards Sulla's tent and told him the news. Where is their target? Sulla asked. Their marching direction is the city of Susa. I suspect they are going to attack the city of Susa, Levi said. The city of Susa supported him and supplied him with a large amount of supplies. How could he allow them to attack the city of Susa? A trace of cold light appeared in Sulla's eyes. He touched his smooth chin and said, What do you think we should do? Of course, let me lead 2 legions to eat him. It would be even better if you can give me 2 more legions, Levi said. The so-called war is to concentrate superior forces to destroy the enemy. Levi is well aware of this. If Sulla is willing to give him 4 legions, he doesn't mind. No, I will give you 1 legion, plus 3,000 cavalry, which can already eat this legion. Sulla said, when it comes to chasing, cavalry is the most effective guarantee to complete the task. Although Sertorius found signs of the enemy cavalry tracking, he didn't care. Their marching direction was north, and by the time they realized and planned to catch up, it was almost dark, and that place was close to Rome. He believed that they would not catch up easily. But he didn't know that he met Livius, who didn't play by the rules. That day, Livius couldn't wait to take 3 legions and more than 3,600 cavalrymen and set off. Although he didn't remember who led the troops, as long as they were Scipio's men, Livius didn't mind eating up this group of people. In front of the city of Lyssa, Sertorius commanded the army to launch wave after wave of attacks on the city of Lyssa. The javelins and arrows rained down on the city walls continuously, and the guards on the city walls and the young and strong men who were temporarily recruited suffered heavy casualties under this attack. Flaccus, the municipal officer of Lyssa, looked desperate. Lyssa was only a small city with a total population of less than 10,000, and the city walls were low. How could it withstand the attack of the wolf-like Roman legions? If there were no more reinforcements, Lyssa would not be able to hold on. After repelling a wave of enemy attacks with great difficulty, there was a wailing on the city wall. There were dead and wounded guards and young men everywhere. Some of the young men were cursing and had even begun to leave the city wall. This was a war between Sulla and Rome. Why did they get involved? Moreover, they might not have any good feelings towards Sulla. Marius was their idol. What should we do? If the enemy attacks again, we will not be able to withstand it. At this time, a senator from the city of Lyssa said, Why don't we escape and flee to Sulla? They will definitely take us in. Flaccus said, Where are our guards and citizens? The senator said. Flaccus seemed silent. They had war horses that could escape the enemy's pursuit, but his men and citizens did not. Flaccus stammered for a long time and could not speak. At this time, a soldier ran over in surprise and said, Sir, we have reinforcements. We have reinforcements. Flaccus was surprised and happy, and asked quickly, What's going on? How do you know we have reinforcements? Just now a cavalryman ran to the north gate and said he was a cavalryman under General Sulla. Levi is leading a large army to chase Sertorius and will arrive here soon, the soldier said. Flaccus and the elders were surprised and happy. Now they were saved. In fact, Levi had already led his army here, but he did not order the army to attack immediately just to let Lyssa city consume more of the enemy's physical strength. At this time, a cavalry captain came over and said, Report to all the lords, the results of the enemy's scout interrogation have come out. The one leading that army is the Grand Justice Sertorius. The enemy has a total of 1 legion of troops plus more than 200 cavalrymen. Sertorius. It turned out to be him. Levi did not expect that his opponent would be Sertorius, the famous general he had recognized. If he defeated Sertorius, would it be considered a self-destructive move? It shouldn't be. This can only be because I am too good, Levi thought. Notify all soldiers to prepare for battle. After receiving the order, the whole army will attack. Levi thought for a while and said. Sertorius did not realize that he was surrounded. He commanded the army to launch a second wave of attack on Lyssa city. It was just that for some reason, the enemy's resistance was much more intense this time. At this time, a burst of exciting trumpets sounded. Sertorius's face changed drastically. Where did the trumpet sound come from? He did not order the army to stop the attack. Could it be that the enemy was attacking by surprise? Hurry up and let them withdraw. The whole army is ready to fight, Sertorius said to his adjutant. At this time, he found that a large number of cavalry rushed from the west, and they rushed directly to the soldiers who were attacking the city. Chapter 108. Great Victory. Judging from the smoke and dust, the number of soldiers was at least 2,000, which made Sertorius' heart sink. It was definitely the enemy's main force, and he didn't know how many soldiers the enemy had. Facing the cavalry's charge, the infantry didn't dare to retreat. They knew that if they retreated, it would be a one-sided massacre. Deploy a circular formation with 100 men as a unit. Deploy a circular formation, a military tribune shouted. After receiving the order, the retreating soldiers immediately formed a circular formation with 100 men as a unit. They raised their shields and faced outward. so they didn't have to worry about attacks from behind. The cavalry rushed to the side of the soldiers, threw the javelins in their hands fiercely, and then rode away. Because there were no stirrups, the combat effectiveness of the cavalry in this era was very problematic. When you cut the infantry with a sword, sometimes it's not the infantry who is cut to death, but you fall off the horse due to the reaction force. There is no such demeanor of the cavalry in later generations, so after Levi discovered this, he did not vigorously develop the cavalry, but focused on developing infantry. As for the stirrup, Livius did not intend to use it for at least a few decades. Rome's powerful enemies, the Parthians, the Germans, and the Gauls, were all dominated by cavalry. If they had stirrups, they would be the biggest enemy. Those javelins shot fiercely into the Roman infantry phalanx. Because the phalanx was extremely dense, the hit rate was quite good, but because they reacted quickly and set up a tortoise shell formation, the effect was not significant. At this time, the flags of the three directions were flying, and the three legions marched in neat steps to kill Sertorius. But they deliberately left a gap, and the gap in the southwest was particularly large. Encircling 3 and missing 1, it seems that the enemy is not a simple character, Sertorius thought secretly. In fact, the West also pays attention to encircling 3 and missing 1. Of course, this tactic is mainly to reduce casualties. If you want to annihilate them all, then the infantry and cavalry will cooperate to encircle them, but the casualties will be very large. Levi actually wanted to annihilate them all, but the casualties would be too great, so he still encircled 3 and missing 1. Then, just thinking about it, Sertorius knew what would happen. Once he retreated, he would be chased by the ambushes, and then by the one-sided cavalry. But if he didn't retreat, he would really be wiped out. This is actually a question of dying early or later. After just a little thought, Sertorius made a decision. Order the 5th to 10th battalions to stay and block the enemy, and everyone else will retreat with me. As the saying goes, kindness is not a good way to command an army. Since you know you are not the enemy's opponent, you should try to minimize your casualties. These 6 battalions include not only the 4 battalions that attacked the city, but also the 2 battalions in the main camp. There was a silence at first, and the bugler immediately blew the bugle. The battalion flags waved, and the troops who received the order were desperate, but they still obeyed the order and stayed to prepare to block the enemy. "I'm sorry, I owe you this time," Sertorius said apologetically. But it's not that easy to escape. Seeing that Sertorius really led his army to flee to the southwest, the 2 legions gradually closed in the middle. Some soldiers took up crossbows and stood in the front row, 1 row squatting, 1 row standing, all aiming at the gap. There was only an endless bitter smile on Sertorius's face, and he shouted, "Turtle shell formation, rush out!" The Roman soldiers immediately formed a tortoise shell formation. The outermost Roman soldiers put up their shields, and the inner ones put their shields on their heads. "Shoot," said a military tribune. The crossbowman immediately pulled the trigger, and arrows flew out of the string and shot at the dense Roman soldiers. A scream immediately rang out in Sertorius's army, and the crossbowmen quickly retreated, and then the 3rd and 4th rows of crossbowmen stepped forward and continued to shoot arrows. The rain of arrows shot continuously at the Roman army, and screams came one after another. However, these Roman soldiers could still bear it, but soon they found something wrong. Because the rain of arrows shot at them turned into javelins and stones, the passage Levi gave them was getting narrower and narrower. If you want to stay and fight, then die. If you want to escape, you must endure the attack of arrows, javelins and stones. This is an unsolvable problem. Various screams appeared around Sertorius. He even witnessed his own soldiers falling to the ground. Sertorius was heartbroken, but there was nothing he could do. After rushing out of the gap, Sertorius looked back with hatred. He didn't know who attacked him. If he knew, he swore to avenge this great hatred. At this time, the 3 legions finally completed the encirclement and surrounded Sertorius's 6 battalions and some remnants. Watching Sertorius fleeing here with a group of remnants, a word suddenly appeared in Levi's mind, that is, a dog without a home. Notify all cavalry to pursue the fleeing enemy, and leave the rest to the infantry, Levi said. The bugler immediately blew the horn, and the cavalry flags all pointed to the southwest. After receiving Levi's order, the cavalry immediately got rid of the enemy and chased in the southwest. The municipal officials and others on the city wall cheered, and they were finally saved. As for whether to open the city gate to help Levi, this decision was quickly rejected by them. Their losses were too great and they could not afford any losses at all. Before Sertorius had escaped far, another cavalry came out from the side. They kept throwing javelins at the infantry under Sertorius who were fleeing in panic, and Sertorius spat out a mouthful of blood. God has doomed me. There were more than 1,000 cavalrymen in this cavalry alone, and these cavalrymen were completely capable of killing them in the wild. What's more, there were more cavalrymen chasing them from behind, and once they joined forces, it would be their doom. This cavalry did not charge immediately, but drove them to the southwest like sheep, just constantly throwing javelins from the back. Some centurions still wanted to organize resistance, but at this time the 2,000 cavalrymen had already rushed over and joined the cavalry here. More than 3,000 cavalrymen looked mighty, and almost all of them were desperate. Many people no longer obeyed Sertorius's orders, and even the buglers and flag officers did not know where they were. Some even dropped their weapons and shields and fled in all directions with their heads in their arms. "Sir, you go first, remember to avenge us." At this time, a centurion under Sertorius said, and then he took several soldiers under his command and rushed towards the enemy, but they were soon drowned in the enemy's cavalry. Sertorius looked at the cavalry with tears in his eyes. He usually treated the soldiers like brothers, and it was because of this that he won the love of the soldiers. "Hurry up, it will be too late if you don't leave now." At this time, a cavalry captain roared. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We are waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 109 Talks. Sertorius was not a hypocritical person. He clamped his horse and said, "I swear in the name of the God of vengeance that I will avenge my brothers who died today, otherwise I will be damned forever. Follow me." After that, he led only a few dozen cavalrymen to kill like a whirlwind. As the sky gradually darkened, Livius listened to his subordinates' reports with great pride. Although this time they were outnumbered, the opponent was also a famous general. In the future, Sertorius would fight with fewer troops and beat Pompey and Metellus. Now they don't understand their greatness, but one day they will understand. In this battle, we killed more than 1,500 enemies, captured more than 4,000 enemies, and a small number of enemies escaped. Many of the captured enemies were seriously injured and urgently needed treatment. If they are not treated quickly, many people will be in danger of their lives. A military tribune reported to him, "Help them quickly, they are Romans after all, and we can't leave them alone." Livius said, "In addition, our casualties are also very large. At least more than 60 people were killed and more than 200 were injured." The military tribune continued. Levi frowned and said, "We must do our best to treat them. We can't let our soldiers bleed and cry." Originally, he wanted to reduce casualties, but he didn't expect so many people to die. "Yes, sir," the military tribune said. After hearing this, nobleman, who had just walked in, felt much better. Seeing this, Levi hurriedly asked him to sit down. "It's really hard work." "I wonder if Sertorius was caught?" Levi asked. "No, he ran away, and those cavalrymen tried their best to protect him," nobleman said with resentment. "He had hoped to make a great contribution, so he chased him in person, but he didn't expect him to escape. Since he escaped, it's fine, but this legion is also destroyed, and we have completed the task assigned to us by Sulla," Levi said. After all, he was the one who gave his sword, and he didn't want to smash his own signboard. "Levi, I heard that you defeated the famous General Sertorius." "Congratulations." The next day, Levi led the army back to the camp. Just as he was about to report to Sulla's general tent, he ran into old man Metellus, who smiled and congratulated him. "What do you mean? You don't look like you are congratulating me." "Ha ha ha, it's nothing. I am actually very powerful," Levi said with a smile. If he didn't have his own plan, He would make muskets every minute and beat you to collapse, so that you would know the true strength of the traverser. In fact, he is the hidden ultimate boss. Levi comforted himself. Ha ha ha, that's true. Old man Metellus laughed and left here. Levi looked at him with contempt, hoping that he would not cry when he was beaten to collapse by Sertorius in the future. Not long after he left, the handsome and unrestrained cuckold Pompey came over. A sunny smile appeared on his face. I heard that you defeated the famous general you identified, Sertorius. How do you feel? Levi's face frowns. Could it be that the news has spread? Are they just laughing at me? Brother Sertorius, you must work hard in the future and let them know how powerful you are. It feels good. He is indeed a great genius, Levi said with a strong smile. Ha ha ha. Pompey patted his shoulder with a big laugh and left here. Levi shook his head. I hope you won't suffer in the future because of underestimating him. In the future, you will know how great my victory is this time. Walking into Sulla's tent and seeing Levi, Sulla smiled happily. Isn't this our genius General Levi? How do you feel about winning a battle? Very good, Levi said expressionlessly. Why does he feel that everyone is laughing at him now? It seems that he has offended many people by identifying famous generals, but they really don't meet the standards of famous generals. This time Scipio sent troops to attack the city of Lycia. The facts are all there. I wonder how he can deny it, Sulla said with a smile. What should we do next? Livius asked. Send an envoy to question him and ask him to return our hostages, Sulla said. Scipio read a letter Sulla wrote to him, and then looked at the envoy sent by Sulla with a blank expression. General Sulla expressed strong indignation at your war behavior. You are blatantly trampling on peace. General Sulla strongly doubts your sincerity in peace talks, the envoy said angrily. We apologize for this, but you should not doubt our sincerity in peace talks, Scipio said lightly. We ask you to release our hostages immediately, the envoy said. No problem. Even if you don't ask for this, I will agree to let them leave here, Scipio said. The envoy looked at him in confusion. Why was Scipio so easy to talk to? What he didn't know was that Scipio was really fed up with those hostages. General Sulla asked for a peace meeting the day after tomorrow. The envoy did not dwell on the question and continued. Can this be postponed? I haven't been feeling well these past 2 days, Scipio said with an embarrassed look on his face. That's impossible. General Sulla said that you have been finding all kinds of excuses to delay for more than half a month. If you continue to delay, General Sulla will have no choice but to send troops to attack your camp, the envoy said very firmly. Scipio was silent for a while, then said, Okay, but I also have a few requests. Please speak. Each side can only send 3 people to this meeting. No problem. The other location is 5 miles outside the camp. No problem. And, Scipio kept putting forward several conditions, and the envoy basically agreed to them. Of course, these still had to be decided by Sulla. After the envoy left, Nausicaa asked, Father, do you really want to negotiate? Yes, Scipio said with a headache. In fact, he regretted it a little. If he could, he would never be a consul. In this way, he would not have to appear at the forefront of the war between Sulla and Rome, putting the future of his family in danger. One of Sertorius's legions was destroyed. Sulla's chances of winning were even greater, and it was hard for him to see Rome's chances of winning. Carpo and the others won't agree. Nausicaa said, I understand, but there's nothing we can do. Scipio looked helpless. On the plain outside the city of Theron, a large number of Roman troops left the barracks and appeared outside the city. Scipio left the army with 2 guards, and in front of him were Sulla, Levi, and Metellus. The 6 of them rode their war horses and began to talk between the armies. Scipio, long time no see, Metellus said with a complicated expression. Chapter 110 Turtle-shaped machine. I didn't expect that we would meet under such circumstances, Scipio said indifferently. Levi looked left and right, wondering if the 2 old guys had an affair. Scipio, what have you thought about? As long as you are willing to join my side, I can guarantee that your family will be safe, Sulla said. What if not? Scipio said. Your whole family will become public enemies of the state, and those nobles killed by Marius and Sylla will be the fate of your whole family, Sulla said with a sneer. Although he was mentally prepared, Levi still felt like a gust of cold wind when he heard Sulla say such words. The reason why he joined Sulla was to avoid this situation from happening to him. Hearing this, Scipio could hardly believe his ears. He immediately said angrily, "What did you say? You can't do this. Our Scipio family has made great contributions to Rome. We defeated Hannibal, destroyed Carthage. If you do this, you will definitely be cursed by the Roman people." Mario can. "Of course, I can too." Sulla smiled indifferently. The words were simple, but full of domineering. Scipio's face flushed with anger. He knew Sulla would do this. Marius was a madman, a butcher. Sulla was also a madman, a butcher. "Take my advice, give up. You have no chance of winning." At this time, Metellus said, "As long as you join us, I guarantee with the honor of my family that your whole family will be safe. I am a descendant of the Scipio family. How can I surrender without a fight?" Scipio said with red eyes, "This is not called surrendering without a fight. This is a wise choice." Sulla said patiently, "Levi, tell me, why did you choose Sulla?" Scipio thought for a while and asked. Levi felt puzzled. How could the war burn to his head? Because Sulla will win. Levi thought for a while and said. Others looked at Levi with strange faces. "You are so confident in Sulla. Did you contact Sulla when we met?" This sentence has been in Scipio's heart for several months, and now he can finally ask it in person. "No, I didn't know Sulla at the time, and I had no contact with him," Levi said. He didn't lie, Sulla said. Seeing that both of them denied it, Scipio finally let go of his resentment. There was no need for them to lie, which proved that at least he had not misjudged the person at the time. "What do you think I should do?" Scipio asked. "Quickly surrender." Levi rolled his eyes. He was not interested in comforting Scipio. Sulla's mouth corners slightly raised. This was a very good thing to say. "I also want to ask you a question. When Gutta led his men to attack my manor, did you and Nias want him to take it down and then get the formula of white sugar for free?" Levi also asked about the thorn that had been hidden in his heart. Scipio's eyes flashed, and he quickly denied it. "Absolutely not. I did try my best at the time. Don't lie to me here. I don't believe those soldiers dare to do anything to you two elders, not to mention that you are the head of the Scipio family," Levi said with a sneer. Sulla and Metellus' faces changed slightly. They had only heard that Livius and Scipio had a bad relationship. It turned out to be because of this. They just didn't expect that the seemingly glorious and majestic Scipio would be such a person. "Livius, believe me, Gutta has told me everything back then. He lied to you." Scipio wanted to defend himself, but Livius was no longer interested in playing this game with him. "To tell you the truth, you are doomed to fail. Look back and see what your soldiers are doing," Livius said. Scipio looked back and found that a large number of soldiers had left the army and ran around them to Sulla's army. "What's going on?" Scipio was shocked. "Your men have betrayed you a long time ago. As a descendant of Scipio, you have ended up being betrayed by soldiers. It is really a shame for your family," Livius said with contempt. Scipio felt dizzy. It was over. It was completely over. "General, should we go back first?" At this time, one of Scipio's guards said, "Do you think going back will help? With your limited manpower, you are doomed to fail. We have already built 50 powerful trebuchets. If you are stubborn, then there is only one way to go: death," Livius said. Livius is not lying. "Your camp can't stop this kind of trebuchet. Surrender." Metellus sighed and said. Scipio knew Metellus very well. He was probably telling the truth, but it made him more confused. What kind of trebuchet could be so powerful? "Can I go back and think about it?" Scipio said. At this time, his mind was in a mess and he didn't know what to do. "No problem. I'll give you 1 day, and we will attack the city the next day," Sulla said. "Okay," Scipio said with a bitter face. When Scipio returned to the camp, he knew what happened. Catiline took his legion to Sulla, and even another legion had people follow him. This made Scipio so angry that he almost vomited blood. Nasica kept cursing Catiline, calling him mean and ungrateful, but after hearing Sulla's words, he was speechless. How could he treat the Scipio family, the heroes of the country, so cruelly? Scipio couldn't sleep all night. He thought about how he had a strong army in the past, but now he only had 3 legions of soldiers. How could he be Sulla's opponent? What should he do? The next day, A centurion came in. Report to the consul. Sulla has sent out a heavy army to besiege the barracks. They have sent out tortoise-shaped machines to dig trenches. Hearing this, Scipio and Nasica's faces changed drastically. Let's go and take a look. Scipio and Nasica hurriedly walked up to the city wall and found that the flags were flying in the distance. The soldiers of the two legions were lined up in neat squares, quietly looking at the barracks in the distance. Some soldiers pushed tortoise-shaped mechanical vehicles to the city wall and stopped at a place where 100 Roman steps were. The tortoise-shaped mechanical vehicle is not really like a tortoise. It is a machine developed by the ancient Greeks for digging trenches and climbing city walls. It is mainly made of oak wood, like a mobile house with an opening on the top. The roof panels are surrounded by fine wattle strips, and a light crossbow is installed on the beams to attack the city walls. The whole machine is filled with 2 layers of seaweed filled with rough skin or straw soaked in vinegar, so that it can counterattack artillery or fire attacks. Chapter 111 Conditions. The base is rectangular, made up of 4 horizontal beams and 2 woods. There are 8 wheels on the base, which can be moved by the wheels and even adjusted according to different terrains. The soldiers on the city wall were extremely nervous. Fortunately, the crossbows did not attack. The soldiers hidden inside began to dig with the cover of the machinery. A large amount of soil was dug out and then piled in front of the trench. Seeing this, Scipio's heart tightened. "Do you want to destroy those turtle-shaped machines?" a military tribune asked. Scipio's face was uncertain whether to fight or not. If he really fought, the lives of his family would be put on the line. "Fight." At this time, a deputy general said, "Shut up." Scipio shouted angrily, "No one is allowed to start a war unless the enemy takes the initiative to attack." Scipio said. Everyone looked at each other in bewilderment. The enemy had come to the door. Could they just sit there and watch the enemy surround them? But the soldiers on the city wall found that they were wrong. Sulla's soldiers wanted more than just a siege. After building an earth wall behind the trench, they began to assemble the trebuchets under the cover of the earth wall. Scipio carefully observed the trebuchets. Although the trebuchets were behind the earth wall, they could not hide their tall bodies. "This is definitely not our Roman trebuchets," Nasica said very confidently. "Yes, some of these trebuchets are nearly 3 people tall, which is definitely not comparable to ordinary trebuchets," Scipio said. At this time, they remembered the rumors some time ago that Livius invented a terrifying trebuchet that could easily destroy their city walls. His officers asked for battle one after another, and they couldn't delay any longer. Scipio's face was as gloomy as if water was dripping out, but he never mentioned starting a war. His officers were almost crazy. "What on earth are you doing? Just sit back and watch the enemy set up the trebuchet. Give me a word whether you want to fight or surrender." Only Nasica vaguely guessed his thoughts, which made him feel sad. Scipio is sacrificing himself for the sake of his family. Not long after, 50 trebuchets were set up. Sulla, Levi and others were watching the first round of attacks from a distance to see how effective this type of trebuchet is. Some soldiers lifted 150 kilograms of stones onto the trebuchets and waited for Sulla's order. "Remember to only conduct 1 round of test firing, and then send someone to contact Scipio and ask him to surrender as soon as possible," Sulla said. After receiving Sulla's order, a military tribune under Levi immediately ordered the launch. 50 soldiers smashed the firing hammers almost at the same time, and huge stones flew into the air with a whistle, and then hit the earth wall of the military camp. Dot! Screams immediately came from the earth wall. The walls of the Roman military camp were only made of stone in permanent military camps. This was not a permanent military camp, so it was just an earth wall, faced with terrible boulders. Some of the soldiers who were hit were immediately smashed into meat paste. Some of the city walls collapsed after being hit by the boulders. The soldiers on the city walls were buried in the soil, and some were even rubbed by the stone bullets, with their bones broken. After all, this is not a solid ground. Those boulders can directly smash a 7-foot-high pit on the ground. For a while, there were wailing everywhere. Sulla and Metellus were all stunned, and Scipio was also stunned. "What kind of catapult is this? It's so powerful." For a while, No one cared about the injured soldiers. Levi also took a breath of cold air. No wonder Xiangyang City couldn't withstand the cannon fire. This cannon was really too powerful. The soldiers under Scipio finally reacted. Looking at the tattered city wall, although there were trenches, spikes and a series of defensive measures outside, they did not feel safe at all. They ran down the city wall in fear and ran to their camp. Scipio was also sweating coldly. Fortunately, those stone bullets didn't target him just now, otherwise he would be finished. "Let's go down first," Nausicaa said. Scipio nodded and quickly followed Nausicaa down the wall. Sulla and others were very excited. Should they take this camp? In the end, they decided to act according to the original plan and sent a cavalryman to the bottom of the wall to start shouting. By order of General Sulla, all officers and soldiers are required to surrender before 3 o'clock in the morning, otherwise the whole army will attack the city, and all prisoners will be deprived of their citizenship and demoted to slaves. The time in Rome is very fucked up. They divide a day into 12 hours of daytime and 12 hours of night. The time starts at sunrise and sunset respectively. But in winter, the days are short and the nights are long, and in summer, the days are long and the nights are short. This has caused a phenomenon that the Romans' 1 hour time is uncertain. Sometimes an hour is 45 minutes, and sometimes it is more than an hour. Because it is autumn now, and the dawn is early, the 3 o'clock in the morning mentioned by this cavalryman is basically 9 o'clock. Scipio calculated the time and there was probably less than 10 minutes left. What should I do? Looking at the frowning Scipio, Nausicaa hesitated for a long time and finally said, "Since you have already made the decision, why are you still hesitating?" Scipio's body shook, and he looked at him with a complicated expression. "There is no coward in the Scipio family who will lose without a fight. I will be the shame of the Scipio family." "No, you are just for the continuation of the family," Nausicaa said excitedly. "Who will believe these words?" Scipio said with a wry smile. "Okay, then I will surrender. I will discuss some conditions with him. If nothing unexpected happens, he will agree to all of them. Then you will return to Rome to continue to resist Sulla, and the glory of the family will all depend on you." "I know," Nausicaa said with a painful face. Scipio nodded, touched his head affectionately, and then resolutely turned and walked towards the city wall. "Where is Sulla?" Scipio said loudly. "Have you thought it through?" Sulla appeared on the top of an earth wall, revealing half of his body. "I can't surrender, but I have 2 conditions. One is that the lives of the members of the Scipio family must be guaranteed, no matter whether they rebel against you next. You cannot deprive them of their citizenship, cause them any harm, imprison them, or exile them. Another is that you must let Nausicaa leave here." Scipio said loudly. Hearing this, both Sulla's soldiers and Scipio's soldiers were in an uproar. He was the head of the Scipio family. How could he say such a thing? Most of these soldiers grew up listening to the stories of Scipio the Great and Scipio the Great, and many of their ancestors participated in the 3 extremely tragic Punic Wars. Chapter 112 The Fall of Myth. They knew how the graceful Hannibal defeated one Roman legion after another, killed one consul after another, and how Hannibal massacred and captured more than 50,000 Roman soldiers and 20,000 allies in one battle. He wreaked havoc on the land of Italy, and the Roman people were displaced. But the great dictator of Rome, Quintus Fabius, led 4 legions and dared only to follow him, and did not dare to fight him at all. This Quintus Fabius was nicknamed the Procrastinator and was ridiculed by the Romans from the elders to the people. But after the Battle of Cannae, this great dictator was re-elected as the great dictator. Because the Roman people found that only the procrastination tactic was the most correct tactic, Quintus Fabius went from being a procrastinator to the shield of Italy, and then became a Roman hero, and was worshipped by the people of the country. At that time, in their eyes, Hannibal was a devil, and the whole country reached a consensus that the Romans could hardly defeat Hannibal on the front battlefield. But the Battle of Zama changed all that. Scipio came out of nowhere and finally defeated this devil head-on in Zama, North Africa. He was like the savior of Rome, ending this epic war and re-establishing the confidence of the Romans. In the eyes of many people, Scipio was their god of war, Mars. But now the descendants of Scipio are going to surrender, and they surrender without a fight. I don't know how many myths in their hearts have been shattered. Sulla was so excited that his face turned red. The Scipio family was going to surrender to him. This kind of glory was even more brilliant than defeating the king of Pontus. No problem, I promise. Sulla's voice trembled a little. Okay, I surrender on behalf of the whole army, and I hope you can treat them well, Scipio said expressionlessly. The soldiers finally couldn't help it. There was an uproar everywhere. Even military discipline couldn't restrain their restlessness. Why did he surrender? Please rest assured, I will treat them well, Sulla said with a big laugh. Metellus and Pompey looked at Scipio in disbelief. It was incredible. Scipio actually surrendered? Scipio turned around silently and looked at Nasica deeply. Nasica was already in tears of pain. He vowed to remember everything today and to avenge it all. Old friend, are you really leaving? Metellus said reluctantly. 5 days have passed, and most of Scipio's men have surrendered to Sulla. Some also left in all directions, and Sulla did not stop them. As for Scipio, Sulla had always treated him with courtesy, but Scipio did not want to stay here for a day. Today, he finally got Sulla's permission to leave here. Yeah, stay here and let you laugh at me? Scipio laughed at himself. Now I'm afraid I've become the object of everyone's ridicule. What are your plans for the future? Metellus asked. Return to Rome to study philosophy and history. I am very interested in Greek philosophy and history recently. If possible, I decided to write a book called History of the Punic Wars, Scipio said. Really? If you finish it, you must send me a copy, Metellus said with great interest. This is written by Scipio's descendants. There must be many inside stories that others don't know. Of course, your copy is indispensable, Scipio said with a big laugh. By the way, there is one more thing I want to ask you. Scipio's face showed a trace of hesitation. Just tell me what it is. If I have any accident, I hope you can help me take care of Nasica and others, Scipio said. How can you have an accident? Didn't General Sulla guarantee your safety? Metellus said. Now it's a chaotic war. Who can tell some things clearly? Scipio sighed and said, no problem. If we lose, I hope you can take care of Appius and Nepos, Metellus said. The Appius and Nepos he was talking about were his 2 sons. Okay, I'll take them in as my sons then, Scipio said with a big laugh. The 2 of them made a gentleman's agreement very tacitly. Although they were in 2 different camps, this did not prevent them from maintaining each other's interests. In fact, if it weren't for the butcher Marius, they would never have come to this point, but would only be good friends. Scipio left here with a few slaves. Metellus said goodbye reluctantly, but all good things must come to an end, and they had to part ways in the end. However, what Scipio didn't know was that his every move was being watched. Don't ask, don't say, it's best to plug your ears. When you kill someone, you will naturally be given freedom, and even a sum of money to go home. If you know too much, even I can't protect you. The power I represent is definitely something you can't afford to offend. Don't think about escaping. Even if you escape from Rome, we can still take your lives, and this place has been blocked. You'd better be honest. In a grove, a masked cavalryman said to a dozen other masked cavalrymen in fluent Persian. Those cavalrymen all had iron collars around their necks, which represented their status as slaves. Even if they escaped, they could be easily caught back. We know that as long as we are given freedom, we are willing to do anything, one of the masked men said in Persian. They were all Parthian, archaic empire, cavalrymen, and they were sold to Rome as gladiators because of their defeat. Unexpectedly, their master sold them to a stranger, and the stranger gave them a task to kill a man. As long as he killed him, he would give them freedom. These slaves had no choice at all, and finally agreed. The pain of being a slave gladiator is definitely not what ordinary people can imagine. You may die at any time. It is better to take a gamble and maybe you can get freedom. It's good that you understand. Now you are divided into 2 parts. One part will ambush in front, and the other part will rest here. Pay attention to keeping the horsepower, the masked man said. The Parthian slaves looked at each other and finally obeyed his order. Some rode away on war horses, and some stayed on the spot. Not long after, Scipio and several of his slaves appeared in sight. The masked man's eyes flashed. That's them. "See the one on the white horse? That's him. Just give me his head and you'll be free." "We understand," the Parthian slaves said one after another. When Scipio and his slaves got closer, they jumped on their horses, picked up their bows and arrows and chased after them. "Who are you?" A slave quickly spotted the Parthian slaves rushing out of the woods and asked in surprise. Chapter 113 Assault. The slaves did not answer. As a Parthian cavalry, their riding skills were absolutely top-notch, and their Parthian archery was as famous as Mongolian archery, and they quickly closed the distance with Scipio and his men. "Run, master," a slave said in fear. Scipio was so scared that he was out of his mind. He didn't expect that someone would assassinate him. Who wanted to assassinate him? Could it be Sulla? But it was unlikely, and he didn't need to do it. But Scipio didn't have time to think about it. He hurriedly turned his horse and fled. A slave hurriedly drew out his dagger. He was not a warrior, but an ordinary slave serving Scipio. The dagger was just a thing for him to be brave. At this moment, several arrows shot over. The slave dodged in panic, but was still shot by an arrow. When he stood up, a cavalry passed by him. He took out the dagger and skillfully cut across his throat. Puff! A stream of blood spurted out from his neck, and almost half of his neck was cut by the sword. The big man continued to rush forward as if nothing had happened. Whether it was his past life as a warrior or his current gladiator, this kind of thing happened to many times. Seeing the horses getting closer and closer, Scipio was terrified. Although he also claimed to be proficient in martial arts, he rarely fought in battle. Those slaves were not good at riding, and soon fell behind and were killed by those masked men. They controlled the horses with spurs, and then picked up bows and arrows to shoot arrows at Scipio. Although he was on a galloping horse, arrows still hit the horse and Scipio. Scipio's horse wailed and sprinted forward with all its strength. This even distanced him from them, and Scipio had a glimmer of hope for escape. At this moment, his heart sank to the bottom, because several masked cavalrymen were rushing towards him. The sharp dagger reflected a chilling light under the sunlight. "Stop! I am Scipio. You can't kill me. Sulla promised to save my life," Scipio said loudly. But the cavalrymen were not moved at all, because they could not understand Latin. The two cavalrymen attacked Scipio from both sides at the same time in tacit understanding, and Scipio blocked the slash of a dagger. Just when he thought he would be injured, the war horse under him suddenly fell to the ground, and then Scipio rolled uncontrollably, turning several times in a row without coming back to his senses. It turned out that the cavalryman did not attack him, but slashed at the horse's legs with a sword. Scipio tried to stand up and found that he had been surrounded by those masked men. There was a bloodthirsty light in their eyes. He was asking for mercy, and the cavalrymen slashed at him with random swords. Soon Scipio screamed and lost his life, and a cavalryman chopped off his head. These gladiators whispered to each other whether they should go back to report, and if they went back to report, would they be killed to silence them. Now is a time of chaos. Maybe they can take advantage of the chaos to escape. At this moment, they faintly heard the sound of horse hooves in front of them. They suddenly heard the words of the masked man, "This place has actually been blocked." In fear, they hurriedly fled to the grove. Not long after, a team of cavalry slowly appeared in front of them. This team of cavalry was about 100 people, mainly composed of two parts. One part was the black-skinned Numidian cavalry, and the other part was wearing Roman armor, but there were strange emblems on their armor, which were the cavalry under Levi. Soon they found the fallen war horse and headless body in front of them, so they hurriedly stopped. "Be careful, there are thieves," a cavalry captain said. "Now the thieves are too rampant. They dare to stop and kill the nobles." "This person should be a noble," a centurion said, and then he got off the war horse and carefully investigated the identity of this person. Because there was no head, it was difficult to find out the identity of this person. "Should we chase them and kill them? His blood is still hot. They should not have been gone for long." The cavalry captain thought for a while and said, "Okay, leave a few people to cremate their bodies." The master said that if the bodies are not collected, it may cause plague. "I don't know if it is true. The master is too kind. He actually let us come out to maintain order and collect the bodies of these victims." "That's right." After saying that, The cavalry followed the traces they left behind. The masked man carefully examined Scipio's head, then scratched his face and buried him in a small pit that had been dug long ago. After carefully covering it with soil and leaves, he said, "You have made a wise choice. Come with me. Only by following me can you get out alive. Let the horses go." Those slave gladiators were very reluctant. They were all excellent cavalry. If they couldn't beat a war horse, they could at least escape. What if this person wanted to kill people? Looking at these complaining cavalrymen, the masked man sneered, "If you want to leave now, just go ahead, but don't blame me for reminding you if you die." The slave gladiators looked at each other, wondering how they could leave without the certificate of free slaves. They would be dead by then. In the end, they could only put their face towels on the horses helplessly and drive the horses away. At this time, the masked man revealed his face. A long scar appeared under his left cheek, extending all the way to his neck. "Follow me. You can call me Caesar," the scarred man said. He led the slave gladiators to the main road, scaring them for a long time and scolding them for a long time before letting them follow. But they didn't go far before they encountered a large number of cavalrymen. "Stop! Who are you?" A cavalryman stopped them and asked. "We are fleeing," Caesar said with a smile, handed him an iron plate, and then secretly made a V sign. The cavalryman looked surprised after seeing this, and then asked in a routine manner, "Have you seen any thieves?" "They killed several people." "No, sir," Caesar said. "Let's go," the cavalryman said. Caesar hurriedly led them away from here. Along the way, they found a large number of checkpoints. Not only were there a large number of infantry, but there were also a large number of cavalry tracking down some thieves. This made the gladiators even more guilty. It seemed that this man was not lying. The power behind him was indeed very large and could command a large number of troops. Caesar took them to a residential house near the military camp and said, "I will go get the documents for you now. Don't run around. There will be a caravan heading to Greece tomorrow. You will follow them then." The slave gladiators looked at each other and could only watch him leave. "Thank you very much for the reward from the power of silence." Chapter 114. Remarks on the release. This book is not doing well now. There are two types of advance releases, one with very good performance and one with not so good performance. Mine belongs to the latter. I hope everyone can understand and support it. I won't say anything else. I will change the update time in the future and update all the books at 1800 hours in the evening. Chapter 115. Winter Palace. Caesar walked directly to a tent in the military camp, reported his name and followed a guard to Levi's room. "Report to the master. Everything is done." After the guard left, Caesar said respectfully, "Finally dead?" Levi sighed, thinking of the grievances with Scipio, which were finally settled at this moment. "Go down and collect the reward," Levi said. "Do you need to kill them?" At this point, Caesar made a gesture of beheading. In fact, he was still quite complicated. If Levi killed them, would he kill him? You know, he was just Levi's free slave, and his status was not much higher than those slaves. "No, just kill Scipio. In fact, I don't plan to keep it secret," Levi said. "I want to tell everyone. No matter who it is, even Scipio dares to covet my property, he must die. This is my bottom line." He knew that the foundation of his life was actually those inventions. It was because of those inventions that he could pull up 3 legions and call the shots in Capua and even Rome. Even though Scipio's intentions were not obvious, Levi did not mind using him as an example. No, this was killing the monkey to scare the chicken. Hearing this, Caesar was relieved, and it seemed that his life was saved. Because Levi destroyed the body, people did not notice Scipio's disappearance. Marius the Younger, the son of Capo and Marius, successfully became consul, suppressed the voices of Rome's peace talks, and some people who supported the peace talks were even killed, and then a new round of war with Sulla was launched. However, due to the coming of winter, both sides tacitly stopped fighting. Due to the lack of warm clothes, the Roman army would set up a winter camp in winter and spend the winter there. Livy also returned to Capua with 2 legions to spend the winter. At this time, people discovered that Scipio had not returned to Rome, and they could not find Scipio at all after searching everywhere. For a while, The news that Scipio was killed by Sulla was very popular. The Roman Senate accused Sulla of breaking the agreement and killed Sulla. Sulla firmly denied this and would never admit that he killed Scipio. Therefore, Scipio's life and death became the focus of the dispute between the two sides, and the dispute between the two sides was getting more and more intense. One morning, Hadrianus suddenly came to Sulla's mansion. "General, something big has happened." "What's wrong? Did the Roman army attack?" Sulla was watching a dancer at this time. Although Sulla was an invincible commander on the battlefield, he liked to hang out with dancers and actors in private. Levi posted a notice under the wall of Dragon City, saying that he was the one who killed Scipio, and explained that the reason was that Scipio coveted his method of making white sugar. Hadrianus said, "What did you say? Is this true?" Sulla said with a shocked look on his face. "Yes, there are already many people watching there." Hadrianus said, "Come on, follow me." Sulla said hurriedly, "What's the situation outside?" "In Dragon City," Levi asked lazily. "Metellus is cursing outside?" Valens said cautiously. "Still cursing? Didn't he start cursing an hour ago?" Levi asked. "Yes," Valens said. "Damn, he really has perseverance." "He cursed for more than an hour, as expected. He had an affair with Scipio." Levi despised him fiercely. "Don't worry about him. Remember to close the gate tightly and let no one in," Levi said. "Got it, Master?" "I don't believe you can still break through my Dragon City." Levi was still enjoying Julia's massage leisurely. Not long after, Valens hurried in. "Master, Sulla asked you to open the city gate. He said he had something to talk to you about." Valens said, "Sulla is here too?" "Don't open it, just say I'm not here," Levi said. Valens' face was full of black lines. "Would Sulla believe you if you said that?" "Just reply to him like this: remember that no one is allowed to open the city gate without my order. I want to see how much patience they have to guard the city," Levi said. "Okay." Valens said, "What did you say?" "Levi is not here, outside Dragon City." Sulla almost laughed when he heard this. "He was treating me like a fool." "Yes." Before he left, he ordered that the city gates must not be opened to prevent anyone from stealing the method of making white sugar. Valens said with a smile, "Levi, you bastard, come out." Sulla shouted angrily, "He must be severely punished." Metellus said, "Yes, severely punished." Dolabella was afraid that the world would not be in chaos. Valens looked at all this awkwardly, and after thinking about it, he shrank his head back. "We can't see it, so we can't be annoyed. You guys can scold here, and I'll go back first." The cold wind was howling, and heavy snow froze in the sky, turning Dragon City into a snowy color. Levi lay lazily on the bed, not wanting to get up for a long time. In order to spend the winter, Levi built a palace called the Winter Palace, which was designed entirely for winter. A large amount of firewood was crackling in the fireplace in the hall next door, and the smoke was discharged outside the room through the chimney. In addition, Levi also built a kang road that led to each room and bed. The whole palace and the kang were warm, and the cold outside could not be felt at all. Although she had experienced the kang and floor heating mentioned by Levi for a long time, Julia still felt it was amazing. The winter in the past was extremely difficult, and her fingers often got frozen, but this year they were intact. Julia hugged Levi tightly, her face gently pressed against Levi's chest. When she thought of what the doctor told her yesterday, she was so excited that she could not control herself. She wanted to talk to Levi, but she didn't know how to say it. After a long time, she said, "It's snowing outside." "Really? Then don't get up this morning." Levi opened his eyes, and then closed them lazily. His hand naturally slid to Julia's indescribable part. Julia blushed and held Jong San's salty pig hand. "Shall we go outside to see the snow after dinner?" Julia shook his arm and said coquettishly. Levi opened his eyes and looked at her, not understanding why she thought so. "Why not sleep in such a cold day?" Julia showed a pleading expression on her face. Levi thought about it and nodded in agreement. Julia was like a joyful kitten. She put on her clothes first, and then helped Levi to dress. Seeing that Levi didn't move for a long time, she was so angry that she pinched him hard. This guy was almost a lazy pig. Levi had to put on his clothes. He felt that something was wrong with Julia today. Just after breakfast, Julia was clamoring to go out to see the snow. which made Levi extremely depressed. The clothes of the Romans were extremely simple. In addition to the toga, they only added woolen cloaks on the outside in winter. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We are waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 116 Pregnancy. Whether poor or consul, they all wore this. Although there is cotton cloth now, it is mostly used to make boat awnings. If it weren't for the great Levi, it would take a long time for cotton cloth to be used to make clothes on a large scale. Wearing these clothes to see the snow might make people sick. The weather outside is too cold. Let's not go out. Let's just warm up by the fire inside, Levi said. Look at what this is. Yulia took out 2 clothes from a box next to her. Levi's eyes lit up when he saw them. Are the cotton padded clothes made? Yes. These clothes are very warm to wear. Cybele just sent them here last night. You came back late, so I didn't tell you that you were tired. Yulia smiled sweetly. In fact, it is not difficult to make cotton clothes, as long as you can make cotton cloth. The difficulty of making cotton clothes is 0. In addition to the cotton cloth used to make the coat, the main thing about cotton clothes is the filling cotton inside. The cotton must first be freed of the cotton seeds inside, which is not difficult, and then the cotton must be fluffed, commonly known as fluffing cotton. Such cotton can be used as filling in cotton padded clothes and quilts. After the cotton is fluffed, it can be rolled into long strips with the wooden board, and then spun into yarn with a spinning wheel, and finally woven into cotton cloth. The 2 cotton padded clothes are red and black, and Levi puts on the black cotton padded clothes directly. Levi is very excited. He finally wears cotton padded clothes, and he doesn't have to wear that kind of silly blanket. Yulia buttoned the buttons very carefully. These buttons are made of bronze. As for the pull rope, it is impossible to make it with the current technology. Levi is now wearing underwear made of cotton cloth, then a sweater made of wool, and the outermost is a cotton padded clothes. Finally, there is a shadow of the later generations. It's a pity that there is no mirror now, and I don't know if it's handsome to wear like this. No, I must be very handsome, and the kind of handsome that is so handsome, because Yulia and Ta often say so. Yulia also put on the red cotton coat. Feeling the gentle warmth, she turned around gracefully, then smiled and said, "Does it look good?" "It looks good," Levi said without hesitation. Even if it doesn't look good, you can never say it out loud, for reasons that any man would understand. Yulia's face bloomed with a smile from the bottom of her heart, and she rewarded Levi with a sweet kiss. "Will you accompany me to see the snow?" "Okay." Levi thought for a while and said. Anyway, there was nothing to do now. Yulia pulled Levi out. Due to the cold weather, there were few people outside. Some guards were shivering with cold, but when they saw Levi coming out, they stood up straight and dared not move. Levi gently patted the snow on their bodies, and then said, "Military discipline is like iron, will is like steel. Don't forget our motto." "But forget it today. The weather is so cold, you can go down and rest." The guards looked at each other in shame, and then left here. "You are too strict with them," Yulia said. "You are right, it is indeed very cold in winter, but it is even more right that soldiers should be strictly required, because this is related to their life and death," Levi said. Yulia rolled her eyes. Levi was really good at preaching. She walked in the colonnade with Levi's arm, looking at the snow scene in the garden, her head gently leaning on Levi's shoulder. Her eyes were so gentle. Levi felt a little strange. Why was Yulia so clingy today? "I have to tell Sir about the cotton coat. This is a big deal," Levi said. "What's the big deal? Isn't it just a piece of clothing?" Yulia asked. "What do you know? Cotton coat is a cheap warm-proof clothing. With cotton coat, our army can fight in winter," Levi said. "Sir has been angry with me recently. I offered him the cotton coat, and maybe he will be relieved." "Can you not go yet?" Yulia asked. "What's the matter with you?" Levi asked. I'm pregnant," Yulia said, and then looked at Lee quietly. Levi was about to leave when he froze when he heard this. His head turned slowly like a machine, and he said in shock, "What did you say just now?" "I'm pregnant," Yulia said with a smile, with indescribable complexity in her eyes. Pregnant, just like being struck by lightning. Levi suddenly short-circuited. Is this true? Is this true? This seems to be the first child in his 2 lives. Levi is excited and scared. Are you telling the truth? Levi asked. Really? Yulia said. The doctor told me yesterday. Why didn't you say it earlier? Levi said angrily. He had sex with Yulia yesterday. Will this lead to miscarriage? Yulia looked aggrieved. You don't even look at Cybele's coquettish look. If you don't feed you, she might have succeeded long ago. Okay, I know I was wrong, Levi said quickly when he saw Yulia about to cry. From now on, I declare that you are the most important person in the Levi family. I will tell everyone this and I will reward the 3 armies, Levi said in high spirits. Am I the most important person in the family? Hearing this, Julia burst into laughter. Promise me that you won't let me see you and Cybele doing that before I give birth to a child. Julia pouted and said, damn, this jealous guy is really powerful. No problem, whatever you say is what it is, Levi said. I will call Gilius over in a while, and then I will give you Julia freedom in front of him. Hearing this, Julia could no longer hold back her joy, and tears rolled down. The release of Roman slaves is divided into official release and unofficial release. The so-called official release is to release slaves in front of administrators or consuls. These slaves will not only become free slaves, but will be granted Roman citizenship as long as they have a certain amount of property. Such Roman citizens will be arranged to the 4 tribes with the lowest ranking. Although they cannot hold Roman public office, their children will obtain full Roman citizenship. Such free people are actually still the retainers of the patron. Sometimes they are subject to the constraints of the patron, and they must work for the patron on a voluntary basis. The patron even has the right to seize his property. Of course, this kind of freedom is actually much better than unofficial freeing of slaves, which means freeing slaves in front of their friends. These freed slaves are not only subject to all the restrictions of official freeing of slaves, but their property will also belong to Livius after their death. Oh, don't cry. Livius couldn't persuade them anymore. In an official residence in Capua, Sulla, wearing a toga and 2 layers of woolen cloak, was quietly looking at a roll of papyrus, but his face became more and more solemn as he looked at it. Chapter 117 Philo. Chapter 118 All is fine, we want them as long as they are strong enough, Levi said. Weapons and armor can be made in Greece and shipped by sea, which can save a lot of money. In addition, if possible, hire some mercenaries from Greece, Macedonia, and Crete. Don't be afraid of spending money. The more people we have, the better. Gaeta nodded and wrote down these things. At this time, a centurion walked out. Master, Sulla and several lieutenants are here. Why are they here? Is it because of the cotton-padded jacket? Levi said puzzledly. Although he didn't understand the reason, he still led everyone to greet them. As soon as he walked out of the city gate, he found that Sulla's face was a little black, so he smiled and said, General, why are you standing here? Why don't you come in? It's not that we don't want to go in, but your soldiers are stopping us from going in, Sulla said with a complicated expression. Military orders are like mountains. That's a good saying. Now is a time of war, and Longcheng is Levi's private territory. Ordinary people are not allowed to enter, so the soldiers' inspections are particularly strict. Levi was startled, which reminded him of Josephus' story in Ziliu camp, but he soon stopped taking it to heart because the national conditions were not as good as before. In Rome, there is no such thing as loyalty to anyone. If there is, it is that the retainers must be loyal to the master. Although he followed Sulla to attack Rome, it is funny to say that he is loyal to Sulla. This is all my fault. I neglected it, Levi said. In the future, when you see General Sulla, even if there is no password and identity token, you must let him pass. Yes, master. The soldiers guarding the city saluted and said. Sulla's face looked much better. He said, but your soldiers are very good. They are not afraid of power and stick to principles. I like them very much. Levi smiled slightly. This is the basic requirement for being a soldier. In the past, there were indeed officers who relied on their positions to break into the city gate. Levi directly pushed them to the bottom, and even the soldiers who let them pass were punished with serious offenses. This stopped this kind of evil trend. Sulla didn't bother with him about it anymore, and the group walked towards Levi's manor. Levi's manor is located in the inner city. Now Longcheng is divided into 3 parts. The core is the production base of various white sugar, liquor and stewed steel, which is the location of Levi's manor when he traveled through time. It's just that a large number of houses have been newly built for them to live in. In addition, there is a city wall separating them from the inner city. Then there is the inner city where Levi lives. There are only military camps and Levi's residence here, and there are no other people. As for the outer city, there are more people. In addition to a large number of military camps, there are also some military families living here. Because the spending power of Levi's guards is very strong, many families are attracted to settle here, and they can do some of their business by the way. Levi only charges some symbolic rent, and there is no strict restriction. Looking at the prosperous outer city, everyone is amazed, and they have a new understanding of Levi's ability to make money. I saw your cotton coat. It's very good. How did you think of this thing? Sura asked. I just thought about it casually. Levi spread his hands and said, is it possible to say that he knew it a long time ago? Seeing that Sulla was about to lose his temper, he quickly added, you know I like designing clothes very much. Everything is accidental. Accidental. Accident? You accidentally came up with something that can allow soldiers to fight in winter? However, Sulla really couldn't find a reason to refute it. He could only say that Livius was really a genius. That thing is very good. Next year, I will ask Greece and Syria to grow more cotton, so that we will have enough cotton clothes. Sulla said, do you want to count me as a credit? Livius said with a smile. Humphrey, you still want credit? I haven't settled accounts with you for killing Scipio yet, so I'll let it go. Sulla said with a dark face. TSK, what kind of person is this? If you don't reward your merits, who will follow you in the future? Livius thought with contempt, but his performance showed no clues. He said with a smile, I have something to discuss with you. What is it? I want to form another legion and make up 6 legions. I hope you can allocate more funds and pay more military expenses. Livius said, don't even think about it. I know you have money, so don't think about it. Sulla shook his head and said, you can't do this. I sent troops to fight for you, and then you still want me to pay. Levi said dissatisfiedly, tell me honestly, why do you want to form a new legion? Sulla asked. I got the news that the Lucanians have been training their troops. I am worried that they will attack Capua, so I hope to add a legion to guard Capua. In addition, if possible, I will not attack Rome next year. I hope to stay to deal with the Lucanians, Levi said with a serious face. Okay, stop pretending in front of me. Sulla looked at him with contempt. What about dealing with the Lucanians? All of them are excuses. It's all for your unborn child. You treat me like a fool. You can form a new legion if you want, but I won't give out a single asset. In addition, to attack Rome, you must take out at least 3 legions. Sulla said. Levi felt a little wronged. He remembered that in history, the Lucanians really sent troops. If they wanted to go north, they would pass through Capua anyway. By the way, I heard you're going to set up a medical school. What's going on? Sulla said. Hearing this, everyone else pricked up their ears. Who dares to set up an academy these days is not a big shot. Could it be that Levi also has this ability? It's not a big deal. I just want to set up a research institute to study the relevant contents of medicine, Levi said. Not a big deal? Sulla was so angry that he had the urge to kill people. Setting up an academy is not a big deal? Maybe this is the hope of Roman philosophy. Are you studying the bacteria you mentioned? Sulla asked. Just a small part, Levi said. How do you know that bacteria exists? At this time, a deputy general couldn't help but interrupt. This bacteria can actually be seen, Levi said. Can be seen? Didn't you say that the human eye can't see it? Sulla asked. The human eye can't see it, but we can see it through a magnifying glass, Levi said. What is a magnifying glass? Someone asked. This is complicated to explain. This involves the principle of refraction of light, which is very complicated to explain, Levi said. Refraction of light, what is that? Someone asked. Refraction of light refers to the change in the direction of light when it passes from one transparent medium to another. Levi asked. What is the medium? How do you know? There is a chapter sent by mistake, This is chapter 118. Sent by mistake. This is chapter 118. The title cannot be changed. Chapter 118. Philosopher, what are you looking at, so absorbed? At this time, a plump woman came in with a delicate little girl and asked, "Dad." The little girl screamed, and then jumped onto Sulla. "Oh, my baby girl." Sulla laughed and said, then picked up the little girl and kissed her. The woman was his wife Metella, also translated as Metella, and his daughter Fausta. "Look at some very interesting things," Sulla said with a smile. "What Pompey gave me, the hygienic operation specifications of Livius's medical camp." "The Livius who killed Scipio?" Metella asked. Sulla smiled and nodded, and Metella's face changed slightly. "What's so good about that little bastard's things?" She didn't have a good impression of Livius, not to mention how much trouble the killing of Scipio caused Sulla. He also caused Publius Sulla to go to Scipio as a hostage. As for the fact that this decision was made by Sulla, she automatically ignored it. "You don't understand." Sir shook his head. "Look at this. The wound above is mainly caused by bacteria, and bacteria are some microorganisms that are invisible to the human eye. Using alcohol to clean can effectively kill bacteria and play a disinfecting role. Also here, we must keep the medical camp clean and tidy, and we cannot spit anywhere. We must clean it more than twice a day to try to avoid the growth of bacteria." Metella is not a village woman who knows nothing. She is from an aristocratic family and has received a good education since childhood. How did he know? "Is he a philosopher?" Metella asked in surprise. In this era, a large number of philosophers have been born in ancient Greece, such as Socrates, Plato and Aristotle, and they have had an important influence on later generations. For example, Aristotle has too many works and covers too wide a range. Many philosophers claim that their schools come from Aristotle. In addition, there is Democritus who proposed the atomic theory. He proposed that nature is composed of countless atoms of different shapes, some of which are round and some are zigzag. Because their shapes are so different, they can be combined to form various objects. He also said that people can perceive objects because atoms move in space. We can see the moon because the moon atoms penetrate our eyes. In addition, he also proposed the soul atom theory. The soul is composed of some round and smooth soul atoms. When a person dies, these soul atoms will fly around and then become the components of another new soul. Compared with the brilliant ancient Greek philosophy, the philosophers of ancient Rome are weak chickens and have no sense of existence at all, at least until now. Greece does not recognize that there are any philosophers in Rome. Even though Cicero barely has a certain status in the philosophical world, many Greeks think that Cicero is not a philosopher at all. The survival rate of the wounded under Livy is much higher than that of other legions. Sulla said meaningfully. "So this is all true?" Metella said excitedly. "If this is true, then Livy is likely to become the first influential philosopher in ancient Rome, and Rome can finally tell the troubles of the philosophers." "Very likely," Sulla said. "In fact, ancient Greek philosophers often put forward many unreliable views. For example, Thales believed that everything has God, and another philosopher believed that everything is made up of air. Another philosopher, Amidst, believed that nature is composed of 4 elements, which he called 4 roots, namely earth, air, fire and earth, which is similar to the Chinese earth, water, wind and fire. They put forward many views, and these views are almost unverifiable. Livy's bacterial view is verifiable. At least the survival rate of Livy's legions is indeed much higher. Doesn't this mean that Livy is much better than those unreliable philosophers? I think you should go to him and ask what's going on. Maybe we will have a great philosopher in Rome," Metella said excitedly. When Sulla attacked Athens, Greece, he cut down many trees in the historic academies outside Athens due to the lack of wood, such as Plato's Academy. But the Greeks were very sad. Although they didn't dare to say it on the surface, the barbarians cursed them behind their backs. Even if Metella knew, she could only hold it in. Compared with the Greeks, the Romans were not even as good as elementary school students in terms of their philosophical achievements. Sulla smiled slightly, but his face soon darkened. "Don't mention that little bastard. It makes me angry when you mention him. He caused me so much trouble, but he didn't even apologize." At this time, a centurion walked in. "Report to the marshal," Levi sent someone to deliver some things. What? Sulla asked. Although his face did not change, he was still very happy in his heart. Did this kid give in? Some clothes and quilts, and a letter in addition, the centurion said. Sulla and Matera looked at each other. What did he mean by this? Why would he send these things? Soon, a soldier brought up the clothes and quilts. Sulla picked up the letter first and read it. What kind of clothes are these? Matera picked it up and found that the clothes were very soft and the style was a bit strange. She was not surprised by this. Livius opened a ready-to-wear clothing store in Capua, and often launched all kinds of strange clothes. Matera also often patronized it. I have to say that some of the clothes are very beautiful and very sexy to wear. Matera has already bought a lot of clothes. I heard that these clothes were designed by Levi. But how could Levi design so many women's clothes? Is he a perverted erotic maniac? Thinking of this, Matera shuddered. Suppressing these bad thoughts, Matera picked up a cotton coat and put it on. It was really soft and warm. This dress is really good and very warm, Matera said with a smile. After reading this letter, Sura's face was solemn. He picked up a piece of clothing and put it on to feel it for a while. Then he picked up a dagger and cut the clothes open, revealing the cotton inside. You have to cut it open even if you don't like it. After all, you are someone's heart. Matera said that she didn't want to take off the clothes on her body. It was much more comfortable than those woolen cloaks. She didn't allow Sura to cut her clothes open. What do you know? Levi said that this kind of clothing is not only cheap, but can also be promoted on a large scale. With it, soldiers can fight in winter. Sura said. Winter combat? Matera knew about winter camps. Is this clothing so powerful? Chapter 119 6 Legions. Of course it's amazing. Wool cloaks are in low production and expensive. If there are cotton padded clothes instead, then winter combat will not be a difficult task, Sulla said with a complicated expression, but soon he became furious. I just don't understand why he didn't come to report such an important matter in person, but instead sent someone to deliver it casually. That's true, right? Metella thought. Go check what Levi is doing, Sulla said with lingering anger. Not long after, the news came. It turned out that Julia was pregnant with Levi's child. Levi ordered a reward for the 3 armies and offered a large sum of money to Juno, the queen of fertility. In addition, he decided to establish a medical school. Medical school? What the hell is this? At this time, Levi was in a bad mood because the medical conditions in Rome were really too poor. A woman's first child is a matter of life and death. Once a difficult birth occurs, it is likely to be a double death. Just like Pompey's second wife died of difficult birth, and Caesar's daughter also died in childbirth after marrying Pompey. Moreover, there is no cesarean section now, and even if there's a cesarean section, how to reduce inflammation is a big problem. Levi can make penicillin by traditional methods, but the effects of traditional penicillin is very poor, and sometimes it is simply gambling with life. Moreover, the mortality rate of newborns is very high, and Levi does not want to see his first child die prematurely. Therefore, he decided to open a medical school and serve as the dean and lecturer. Although he is not a doctor, he definitely knows more than the current doctors. The most important task of the family now is to ensure the safe birth of the child in Julia's belly. Valens, from now on, you will officially become the family's butler and take over everything in Julia's hands. Levi sat at the head of a table, gently holding Julia's little hand, and said to the people on both sides of the table. Julia, who was sitting next to Levi, was prepared for this. She still showed a sweet smile on her face, and sprinkled a wave of dog food to everyone. I know, master, Valens said. In fact, he was still very envious of Julia because she finally got rid of her status as a slave. Although the power in his hands is getting bigger and bigger, the more he knows about Levi's secrets, the less likely he is to get rid of his slave status. He has realized this. In addition, the address of the medical school has been chosen. It is in one of my estates outside Capua. There is a lot of space there. I have asked people to build some dormitories there, which will be ready in a month. However, we can temporarily borrow a manor in Longcheng recently, and we can give lectures here first. Levi said. In addition, we must speed up the enrollment work. In addition to drawing elite soldiers from the medical camp, We can also recruit some midwives. In addition, we can see if there are any young women willing to attend the class. We will teach for free. I will start the class in a week, Levi said. Is it so urgent? A middle-aged man in his 30s, a little fat, who looks a bit like Maitreya Buddha said. He is Dilius, the military tribune of the medical camp. The medical soldiers of the 3 legions under Levi are all his subordinates. He is a doctor with very good medical skills. Of course, Julia will give birth in a few months, Levi said with a serious face. Dilius couldn't help but wipe his cold sweat. Levi seemed to be a bit angry. What's the name of the medical school? Someone asked. How about calling it Julia Academy? Levi looked at Julia and said, it seems that it is popular to call colleges academies now. And he also followed the trend. Julia was startled and smiled with surprise. I don't think this is good. I know that you, the master, love Julia very much, but this may put pressure on her and affect her instead. At this time, Valens said, he makes sense. Let's change the name. Julia smiled bitterly. The more famous this academy will be in the future, the greater the pressure on her. If she was a Roman, it would be a good story. But she was born a slave, which would put her at the forefront of the storm. Levi thought about it and it made sense, so he didn't insist. I think it's better to call it Levi Academy. At this time, Gata said, yes, let's call it Levi Academy. That's a good name. Hearing this, Levi couldn't help rolling his eyes. He didn't expect Gata's ability to flatter people to be more and more sophisticated. This name is not very good. Even Plato Academy is called Agademy Academy. Let's call it Capua Academy. Levi thought for a while and said, later generations called it Plato Academy just for convenience, not really called Plato Academy. Today's university college comes from the word agademy. In addition, I decided to recruit another legion. The war is fierce. The Lucanians and Samnites are likely to attack Capua, so we must ensure the absolute safety of Capua, Levi said. Everyone couldn't help but twitch their mouths. 4 legions are not enough? This must be because of Julia. Julia looked at Levi with surprise. She didn't expect Levi to be willing to help her to this extent. This touched her heart, but she didn't know that she was overthinking. When Capua was captured, Sulla ordered Levi to expand his troops to 5 legions. Valens, with the family's financial resources, there will be no problem in supplying 5 legions. Levi asked, no problem. We have opened up stable sales channels in Greece, Macedonia and Syria. In addition, a large number of foreigners come to our shops in various places to buy goods. Some Roman nobles and knights will also help us sell goods to Egypt and Africa. Now the family's monthly income is about 1.2 million dinars, and it will be no problem to recruit 2 more legions. Valens said. Everyone couldn't help but gasp. The gross income was 1.2 million dinars a month. This is really an extremely terrifying number. Then recruit 2 more. A total of 6 legions. Levi said, pick up deputy positions from other legions, and use them as the core to form the 5th and 6th legions. Next year, let the 4th, 5th and 6th legions guard Capua. Hearing Levi's understated words, everyone was shocked beyond words. This is really too extravagant. Although Sulla and Rome are both expanding their armies crazily, they have not doubled their armies like you. What they didn't know was that the Samnites and Lucanians would definitely rebel, and the Lucanians would have to pass through Capua when they went north, so a major battle was inevitable. So using 3 legions to guard Capua was the minimum requirement. Are there any requirements for recruiting soldiers? Do you want free slaves? Gata asked. Chapter 120 Banquet. What is light? Do you mean the moon's atoms or the sun's atoms? Some people asked in a flurry. Levi looked at them speechlessly. Are you going to stop? How can I answer all your questions? He glanced at Sulla and found that Sulla was also listening with great interest. These explanations are too complicated. Why don't you come and listen when you are free? Levi said. Okay, we will definitely come when the time comes. If you have any difficulties, you can also tell me and I will definitely help. Sulla said with a smile. No need to help. If possible, please help me find some famous doctors. Levi said. No problem. Sulla agreed readily, looking at the excited look of everyone. Levi felt puzzled. Isn't it just a medical school? What does this have to do with you? After arriving at the Winter Palace, Sulla and others immediately felt the difference here. "Why is it so warm here? I don't see any firewood burning," some generals asked. "That's right, it's so strange." Someone looked around and indeed saw no signs of burning firewood. "It's hollow down here, and there's hot smoke passing through here, so it's not cold," Levi said as he stepped on his feet. Someone stepped on it a few times and felt that it was indeed hollow. "Not bad, not bad. I feel my feet are starting to warm up," a deputy general said. "I heard that your family has a lot of delicious food. Why don't we have a meal here today?" Dolabella said. The food of the Levi family is known throughout Capua, and they have also heard about it. This time they came to the door, just to take the opportunity to have a feast. "That's right, today we are here to eat the dog family," Sura said. Hearing this, Levi couldn't help rolling his eyes. He resisted the urge to hit someone, and then said, "No problem, I'll have someone prepare it right away." Not long after, slaves wearing tuxedos and red bow ties were brought up with all kinds of delicious food. The men were handsome, the women were beautiful, and they were all graceful, which made Sura and the deputy generals stunned. There are not only all kinds of cooked food and fruits, but also all kinds of cakes and fine wines. Levi adopted a form similar to the later Western party, allowing them to choose their favorite food. What is popular in Rome now is luxury. As a vested interest in luxury goods, Levi has no reason to stop it. Moreover, rich people don't spend money, and all of it is piled in their hands. This will cause an economic crisis. It is better to fall into your hands, and then use the money for beneficial purposes. Levi found that he was really great. "What is this?" Dolabella pointed to a pot of steaming noodles curiously. Next to the pot was a German slave, and next to him was a wooden plate with several silver bowls on the wooden plate. "Spaghetti, do you want some?" The German slave smiled and said, "There is no such thing as spaghetti in Rome now." As the heir of the great foodie empire, of course, it is his obligation to enrich Rome with various foods. Of course, this kind of noodles is real noodles, and Levi is a little uncomfortable with the spaghetti of later generations. "Give me some, not too much," Dolabella said. There were so many foods here that he felt dizzy. He decided to try a little of each. The German slave skillfully scooped some noodles for him, and Dolabella rolled some with a silver fork and started eating. "It tastes okay," Dolabella said. "It's better to drink some soup. These soups are good for the body," the German slave said. Dolabella followed suit and drank the soup. After drinking it, his stomach really felt much better. "Very good," Dolabella said. Although this thing was very fresh, he still went to see other food. Today, he must eat a big meal, and it would be best if he could eat it until Levi's heart ached. "What is this?" Dolabella pointed to a plate of red food and said that these things were completely wrapped in sticky things, and it was impossible to see what was inside. "Sweet and sour pork tenderloin, made of white sugar and pork," a Gallic slave said. "Made of white sugar, so it is sweet?" Dolabella asked. "That's right, give me some," Dolabella said. The slave brought him some sweet and sour pork tenderloin and put it on a silver plate. It must be said that Levi was generous, and he actually made so many silver tableware. Soon, a sweet smell mixed with the aroma of meat bloomed in his taste buds, and Dolabella's eyes lit up. "This thing is really good and delicious. Give me more of this," Dolabella said. The slave quickly brought him some more sweet and sour pork tenderloin. "And give me a bowl of that." Dolabella soon found a pot of hot apple soup. After drinking a few sips of apple soup, Dolabella immediately felt much more comfortable all over. After eating a few more mouthfuls of sweet and sour pork tenderloin and braised pork, he drank a mouthful of brandy. It must be said that this feeling is great. At this time, he found that Sura and others were eating together and sweating profusely, and he couldn't help but curiously surrounded them. "What are you eating? Why are you sweating so much?" Dolabella asked. "You know, it's winter now, and it's not easy to sweat while eating. This thing is called hot pot. Come and sit down, it tastes really good," Afira said while shoveling mutton into her mouth. "It's a pity there is no chili, otherwise it would be more delicious," Levi said. "What is chili?" Sura asked. Dolabella found a seat very quickly and sat down. He looked at the big pot and saw that it was divided into 9 grids. In one of the grids, mutton slices kept rolling. He was about to scoop some for himself with a spoon, but was blocked by a pharaoh. "If you want to eat it yourself. This is mine." After saying that, a pharaoh put the mutton slices on his silver plate and ate them. "What a stingy guy," Dorabella cursed inwardly. He took a look and found that there was very thinly sliced mutton on a plate on the side, so he put some of the mutton into the pot. As for tofu, he also put some in. Anyway, just to try it. Chili is a plant in the West. It tastes very spicy and strong, I heard from my friends. Levi thought about it and said, "Well, there is nothing wrong with this. It is indeed a plant in the West. Next time, remember to ask your friends to bring some. This stuff is really delicious," Sura said, sweating on the tip of his nose, and then he put a handful of meatballs and fish balls in. "Okay," Levi said speechlessly. He didn't expect Sura to be a hot pot lover. It was really hard to imagine. Everyone ate well and praised Levi's food. In the end, Levi gave everyone a recipe book, and the food made with sugar was especially recommended. These people are all rich people. Don't think that they are eating his food now. In the future, he can earn at least dozens or hundreds of times more. Chapter 121 Class. The news that Levi was going to open a school and be the director spread quickly, not only throughout Capua, but even Pompey, who was far away in Paeon, knew about it. Many people talked about it. "You are a young man who has just come of age and you are the director of the school. Do you really think the school is a joke?" However, there are some who support Levi, such as Sulla and some generals who know the medical battalion. Tullius's manner. Tullius looked contemptuous. "What does he, a young boy, know? He dares to open a school." Can he open a school? He went to Greece to study, so he had an inexplicable sense of superiority over Levi in terms of knowledge. Old Tullius closed his eyes to rest. His spirit has been worse these days, as if he will never wake up at any time. No matter what, he is Levi. He will go there on my behalf on the first day of school. Now the weather is too cold, so I won't go, old Tullius said slowly. In fact, he also felt that Levi was too unreliable. How could he do such a ridiculous thing? "Okay," Tullius said. After all, Levi had a powerful hand in Capua, so he could only endure the contempt. In the blink of an eye, a week had passed, and Levi's academy in Dragon City was finally about to open. This academy was not big, just a manor with a garden. There were also dormitories, which were some 3-story buildings outside the manor. Because Levi had limited energy, he planned to recruit no more than 100 people. 50 of them were given to medical soldiers, and Sulla and those generals found him 20 or so famous doctors and midwives as support for him. Levi found that those doctors and midwives looked reluctant, but their status was very low. In this era, doctors were basically slaves and free slaves. Those midwives were all women. This was one of the few industries that allowed women to enter. There were female midwives in ancient Greece. Although some midwives had poor knowledge, they were very skilled in their business. Levi was very satisfied with this. In addition, there were some children of his retainers. Those retainers were very active, and many of them signed up. But Levi only selected some literate adults. What made Levi unhappy was that none of the nobles and knights' children signed up. Did they look down on him? Forget it. You look down on me now, and I will make you unable to reach me in the future. After a simple hanging ceremony, the academy was about to open. But what surprised Levi was that Sulla, Pompey, Crassus and other generals actually came, and even Metellus, who was extremely dissatisfied with him, came. "Why are you here?" Levi asked. "We came to listen to your lecture," Sulla said with a smile. "Listening to my lecture? What's so good about it?" "It's just about medical knowledge, Levi. I believe you will succeed." Crassus showed a kind smile on his face. Levi and Crassus have known each other for a while. For some reason, Crassus always gave him a feeling of a smiling tiger. "Thank you," Levi said. "I'm here to support you." Pompey was concise. Levi patted his shoulder hard. "Good brother, talk about loyalty." Old man Metellus turned his head away and snorted coldly. "What do you mean? Are you looking for trouble?" Levi snorted unceremoniously, and hugged him and Olabella fiercely. Sulla and others all smiled. In addition, there were the nobles and knights of Capua. Levi's face was not very good for them. "Ha ha ha, Levi, You are so amazing. I didn't expect you to open the Capua Academy, Tullius said with a big laugh. In fact, he was extremely shocked. Didn't Levi open the academy for fun? How could he attract these giants to support him? It must be just friendly support. Tullius made a quick judgment. It's just so-so. Levi shook hands with him. After dealing with these nobles and knights, Levi wanted to ask Sulla to give a speech. Sulla was not polite either, and directly gave an impassioned speech. For these politicians, giving speeches has long been as easy as eating and drinking. Livius also gave a small speech, which was of course prepared for him by Cerebio. He and Pompey were equally bad at giving speeches. After the speech, there was no nonsense, and the class started directly. Today we will talk about the first class. I believe that medicine can be divided into three categories, namely internal medicine, surgery and psychiatry. In fact, it can be further subdivided, but due to conditions, we will not subdivide it anymore. Livius said, just looking at the students below. His face was a little weird, because Sulla, Metellus, Crassus and Pompey also wanted to attend the class. Seeing that Sulla and others were going to attend the class, the knights and nobles of Capua were embarrassed to leave, so they could only listen. First, let's talk about what is a human. A human is made up of skin, muscles, blood, bones, internal organs and other organs. But what are the skin, muscles and internal organs of the human body made of? Livius asked. Everyone shook their heads, and some were very interested. This is a question that philosophers have been struggling to find an answer to. Could Livius come up with a new insight? Cells. Human skin, muscles and internal organs are all made up of cells, Livius said. At this moment, rows of hands were raised below. Levi was speechless. These people were really curious. General Sulla, do you have any questions? Levi said. Director, I would like to ask, what is a cell? Sulla said with a light cough. Next to him, several staff members were writing furiously to record everything. Perhaps everything today will be passed down like the books written by Aristotle. Cells, like bacteria, are things that our human eyes cannot see. They are the basic units of some of our organs, such as skin and internal organs. Levi said. Since the human eye cannot see it, how do you know? Sulla asked. Our human eyes cannot see it, but we can see it through some equipment, such as microscopes. What is a microscope? Microscopes are a set of optical instruments, which are instruments made of special glass, Levi said. As early as 1500 BC, Mesopotamia was making glass. Then the center of glass making moved from Syria to Alexandria. After Rome became increasingly powerful, workshops for producing glass also appeared here. I just don't know how to blow glass, so I can't blow out complex shapes. So it's still a long way from being practical, but there's no problem producing some simple shaped vessels. There was a commotion below. How can glass see creatures that are invisible to the human eye? The school bully Sura wanted to continue asking questions, but he had already caused dissatisfaction among others. Chapter 122 Troublemaker. Dean, I want to ask questions too. At this time, old man Metellus raised his hand and shouted. This shout was really amazing and stunned everyone. Sura looked at the old guy fiercely. You actually dare to ask questions? Old man Metellus raised his head unceremoniously. This is the academy, not a place for you to show off. Levi felt a little headache. Okay, ask questions one by one, and speak more quietly next time. Dean, why can glass see things that our naked eyes cannot see? And what do you think light is? Is it the moon's atoms or the sun's atoms or something else? Do you agree with Democritus' atomic theory? Wow, old man Metellus asked 4 questions like a string of cannonballs. Okay, this is a lot of questions. Let's first talk about what light is. I partially agree with Democritus' atomic theory, but I don't think light is made up of moon atoms or sun atoms, but photons. This is another special particle besides atoms. For example, the reason why we can see this table is because photons shine on the table and then reflect. Some photons reflect into our eyes, and we see the table. The reason why glass allows us to see things that the naked eye cannot see is because of the phenomenon of refraction. Levi said. What is reflection? What is refraction? Dolabella did not raise his hand, but stood up and asked directly. His behavior of asking questions attracted the angry glares of others. How could this guy be so unruly? Levi had a terrible headache. If he didn't care about it anymore, the class discipline would be over. In the future, you must raise your hand before asking questions, otherwise it will be regarded as giving up the right to ask questions, Levi said. Dorabella sat down triumphantly, as if he had won a great victory, which attracted the unanimous contempt of others. A group of shameless guys, Levi complained. What is reflection and refraction? This question is more complicated. I have a detailed description in the textbook I distributed. It is in the last chapter of the first volume, Levi said. Textbook, where is it? Dorabella asked. Levi had the urge to curse. You are not my student. Why should I give you a textbook? At this time, they found that the students sitting behind them were holding a roll of papyrus with dense words written on it. Sulla turned to a doctor behind him, stretched out his right hand and looked at him indifferently. Seeing this, the doctor was sweating coldly and had to obediently offer the papyrus in his hands with both hands. Dorabella rudely snatched the papyrus from the hand of the person behind him, which made Levi want to hit him. He would never let this guy come next time. Pompey turned back and smiled. His handsome face made the midwife's heart beat like a deer. So handsome, she blushed and handed him the papyrus in her hand. Thank you, Pompey said with a smile. The midwife almost lowered her head to her chest and said in a mosquito-like voice, a bunch of bandits. Seeing that the generals had borrowed textbooks from his students, and some of the veteran knights behind were no exception, Levi couldn't help but scold. As the book says, when a photon hits an opaque object, it will reflect. Under completely ideal conditions, its angle of incidence is equal to the angle of reflection. What is the angle of incidence and angle of reflection is introduced in the book, which is not the focus of our class. The focus of our class is the refraction of light, Levi said. He took out a wooden basin half filled with water and put a sword in the basin. Is this sword straight? Levi asked. Yes, his students said one after another. Then take a look. Is it bent in the water? Levi gestured to Dilius next to him to hold a wooden basin and walk towards the students. Dilius was so excited that his face turned red. He originally thought that Levi was just a playboy and running a school was just for fun. I didn't expect him to speak so well. He could tell whether someone was really good or not. If Levi really became a great philosopher, would he become his disciple and go down in history? Just like Socrates and his disciple Plato. Just as Dilius was letting himself go, he looked at Levi in confusion. What was he talking about just now? He didn't hear clearly. Levi looked at this guy with an angry face. What on earth was this guy doing? Bring this to the students to see, Levi said, holding back his anger. There were too many surprises in the class today. Dilius immediately understood what Levi meant. He walked towards the students with the basin of water. It's indeed bent, some students said after seeing it. They may have seen such things in normal times, but they definitely didn't think seriously about why. After Levi's reminder, they found that it was indeed the case. After all the students observed it, Levi asked, so is the sword really bent? Those students shook their heads. How could it be possible? Levi asked Dilius to take out the sword, and the sword was indeed straight. This is the refraction of light. When light enters another medium from a transparent medium, it will refract. Fake, absolutely fake. At this moment, a roar suddenly sounded in the classroom. Levi looked at the source of the sound with great anger, and found that the bastard Olabala was holding the papyrus and shouting loudly. Tell me what's wrong? Levi said with great anger. How can sunlight be composed of 7 colors of light? This is impossible. Olabala said loudly. This is impossible. How can sunlight be composed of 7 colors of light? Someone asked. How can it be impossible? It's written on it. Olabala pointed to the papyrus and said. A group of heads immediately came over. Yes, it does say that sunlight is composed of 7 colors of light. How is this possible? How can sunlight be composed of 7 colors of light? Everyone talked about it, and then looked at Levi with questioning eyes. Could it be that this guy was lying? Dorabella raised her head triumphantly, as if she had caught Levi's weak spot. Tullius breathed a sigh of relief. It turned out that he was lying. Levi had no ability at all. Dilius looked at Levi worriedly. He hoped nothing would happen. Levi looked at Dorabella as if she were a fool. which made Dorabella feel quite uncomfortable. "Is there anything wrong with what I said?" Dorabella asked. "Can you read the last sentence of that sentence?" Levi said lightly. "A bunch of ignorant fools. Today I will let you know how powerful modern people are. Just read it. What's there to be afraid of?" If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We are waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 123. Dorabella glanced at the papyrus and then read it out. Different colors of light have different refractive indices. Under the refraction of a prism, sunlight will become real 7-color light. The rainbow after the rain is the result of the sunlight being refracted. The rainbow in the sky does seem to be 7 colors. But what refracts the sunlight? What is a prism? Everyone was talking about it. Dorabella felt a little guilty at first, but soon straightened his head. He didn't believe that Levi could really make the sunlight 7 colors. As long as Levi couldn't make the sunlight 7 colors in front of him, he wouldn't believe it no matter how much he said. "This is the prism. You can take a look." Levi took out a prism and said, "It's not easy to make this thing." Fortunately, Levi has always wanted to make a mirror, so he bought a glass workshop and blew out a few using the glass blowing method. Blowing glass is actually very simple. Just use a very long hollow iron pipe and blow it into the shape you want. Sura and the others looked at the prism with curiosity. Could it be that this thing really divides sunlight into 7 colors? Levi looked at Dorabella with a playful look on his face. Dorabella felt a little guilty, but he soon straightened his chest and raised his head. He was not afraid. He did not believe that sunlight was really composed of 7 colors. "Let's do an experiment to see if sunlight is really composed of 7 colors," Levi said with a smile. After that, he took the prism and walked to the door, then stretched out the prism and adjusted the angle. The sunlight shone on the prism and was then refracted onto the walls of the classroom, emitting 7 kinds of charming brilliance. Seeing this scene, many people were shocked and stunned. "Miracle," Sura said with a shocked face. "This is impossible." Tullius was so surprised that his mouth could not close. "Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, ingot, purple. It is indeed 7 colors," someone said. Everyone talked about it. How could this be possible? How could sunlight be composed of 7 colors? "Dorabella, in view of your repeated violations of classroom discipline and loud noises in class, I declare that you will be expelled from the class," Levi said with a sneer. "You can't do this. I'm the deputy general. What right do you have to expel me from the class?" Dorabella said arrogantly. Levi looked at this guy with an angry face. "What are you, a deputy general, doing here? This is not the place for you to act wild." "Dorabella, you should go outside to listen to the class first," Sura said. Seeing that Sura had spoken, he could only say aggrievedly, "Okay." After that, he left the classroom, walked outside. Half of his body was leaning into the window, and looked at Levi complacently. "Forget it. I'll bear it." If he quarrels with this fool, his IQ will be reduced to the same level, and then Dorabella will defeat him with his rich experience. "What is the rainbow in the sky refracted by?" Sura asked puzzledly. Levi thought about it and explained it. This class made everyone feel like listening to a heavenly book, breaking the worldview of many people. Levi explained the transformation of water into liquid and gaseous states, the principle of rainbow formation, and the concept of high-temperature disinfection. Since the microscope had not yet been made, they still could not see microorganisms, but this did not affect the use of magnifying glasses. They also asked many other questions, but Levi did not answer any questions that were not related to medicine. What a joke. Knowledge is wealth. Knowledge is power. Levi has a deep understanding of this, and he will not teach these people that knowledge. If there is a knowledge explosion, how can he still be far ahead of the world with his knowledge? Even though Levi has always been self-sufficient, this class he taught has become completely famous. After returning home, Tullius looked lost. "Why are you like this? Did you have a good day today?" Old Tullius said while lying on the bed. "Is it okay, Dad? Do you know that sunlight is formed by 7 colors of light?" Tullius asked. How is this possible? What's wrong with you? Are you feeling uncomfortable? Old Tullius asked. Do you know that light can be reflected and refracted? Tullius asked. Old Tullius looked at Tullius with a worried look on his face. Levi didn't cast any witchcraft on him. Do you know that water evaporates to form water vapor, and then rain falls from the sky? What's wrong with you? Don't scare me, Old Tullius said with a look of horror. Dad, I want to go to the academy to attend classes. Tullius said, no, I strongly oppose it. Old Tullius said, if you come back like this after going for a long time, you will become a madman if you go to class again. Look at this. Tullius handed a roll of papyrus to Old Tullius. What is this? After reading it, Old Tullius fell into deep thought. This thing looks extremely complicated, but it makes sense when you think about it. Is this true? Today, Levi used the 3 prisms realm to turn sunlight into 7-color light, and everyone saw it, including Sir and others. Tullius said, what did you say? This is impossible. Old Tullius was shocked. I saw it with my own eyes and heard it with my own ears. Sykes and Vecious also saw it. If you don't believe me, you can go ask them. Tullius said. Old Tullius was speechless for a long time. If this was true, then the matter was serious. Livius might really be a great philosopher. Since you want to go, I won't stop you. Old Tullius thought for a while and said, thank you, Father. Metella returned home happily. She wore the cotton coat sent by Levi to go to her best friend Mrs. Metella's house and found that the coat was really soft and warm. It not only did not affect her activities, but also pressed her shoulders like a blanket. Even her best friend praised it repeatedly, which made her feel very good today. At this time, she found Sulla holding a glass and looking at a roll of papyrus. What are you doing? Metella asked. Reading a book written by Levi. Sulla looked at her and said, Levi actually wrote a book? Metella said with a shocked face. Levi just came of age this year. How could he have already written a book? Let me see. Metella walked over and said, the human body actually includes a large number of cells. What are cells? Human blood is mainly divided into 4 categories. We divide it into type A, type B, type AB and type O. In addition, there are some rare blood types. The same type of blood can be transfused into each other, but sometimes it may cause rejection. People with AB blood type can receive blood transfusions from the above 4 blood types and are called universal blood recipients. But his blood can only be transfused to people with AB blood type. Thank you very much for the reward from Alaska. And Wenzai Master. Chapter 124 Cicero. People with blood type O can only receive blood type O, but can receive blood transfusions from the above 4 blood types, and are called universal blood transfusions. When a woman is giving birth or someone is bleeding heavily, we can maintain their life through blood transfusions, but pay attention to the following points, on the classification and treatment of surgical wounds. Looking at these medical books, Metella was stunned. How could this be possible? How could Livy have such a profound understanding of medicine? If all this is true, his understanding of medicine has even surpassed that of the Greek philosopher Hippocrates. Hippocrates is considered the ancestor of Greek medicine. In ancient times, many people believed that diseases were disasters sent by God, and even Greece was no exception. Even today, many people in the West still believe that AIDS is a disaster sent by God. Hippocrates believed that to prevent diseases, one must be moderate in diet and daily life, and at the same time have a healthy lifestyle. He believed that health is a person's natural state, and the reason why people get sick is because the body or mind is unbalanced, which causes nature to go off the rails, which is quite similar to the harmony of yin and yang in traditional Chinese medicine. But Livy's views completely overturned all of this and pushed medicine into a new field. This is a qualitative leap, an improvement from the macro to the micro. Metella kept flipping back until he read the optics section. After reading it, Metella didn't come back to his senses for a long time. There is no doubt that this is an excellent philosophical work. Western philosophy is not the viewpoints of cynicism, Marxism, utopia, etc. as the Chinese people think. It is all-encompassing, including mathematics, religion, medicine, etc. For example, there is a philosopher named Pythagoras who believes that mathematics is the best way to purify the soul. So he founded a religion that believes that all things are numbers and provides means to purify the soul to ensure immortality. Therefore, he is known as the founder of the school of numbers. Therefore, philosophy is also considered the mother of all disciplines, and disciplines such as mathematics, physics, chemistry, and biology are considered to be separated from philosophy. How could Levi write such a work? Metella said, to write such a work requires deep thinking, which is absolutely impossible for ordinary people. Levi said this is only the first volume, and he has not written the second volume yet. Sulla said. Metella was so shocked that she couldn't speak. After a long time, she said, are these real? If they are all fake, then there is no use. The treatment of trauma is very good, and many new ideas are proposed. Some of them have been applied in the medical camp, which greatly reduced the casualties of the army. Sulla said, I have decided to promote it throughout the army and send some doctors to learn it. Metella agreed very much. Sulla would vigorously promote anything that can reduce the casualties of the army, not to mention that it is wartime now, and the optics seem to be real. Look at this. Sulla took out a magnifying glass and placed it on top of the papyrus. Why are the words bigger? Metella was shocked. This is called a magnifying glass, which uses the principle of light refraction. Sulla said proudly, thinking of snatching the magnifying glass and prism from Levi. He felt relieved when Levi looked like his parents had died, and this. He took out the prism and walked to the door. When the sunlight hit the prism, it refracted a charming 7-color light. Metella stared at the 7-color light in a daze. How could this be possible? This is simply a miracle. So Levi is a great philosopher, Metella said. Yes, he is really a philosopher. We in Rome finally have our own great philosopher, Sulla said with relief. The Romans were miserable. They were extremely powerful in military force, but they were always ruled by the Greeks in culture. They were even proud to study in Greece. After hundreds of years of founding the country, they didn't even have a philosopher worth showing off. They were ridiculed by the Greeks for many years, and the Roman barbarians secretly scolded them. But now Rome finally has its own philosopher. How can this not make Sulla and Metella ecstatic? I decided to have someone copy Levi's works and send them to Rome, Greece, and Rhodes. I want to tell them that we in Rome also have our own philosophers. Sulla said. Will this reduce the casualties of the Roman army? Metella asked. It doesn't matter. After all, they are all Romans, and I believe we will definitely win, Sulla said very confidently. The battle situation was now very clear, and they had an absolute advantage. If Levi formed 2 more legions, their advantage would be even greater, and he could not think of any reason why they would lose. Well, then, said Metella, she had long been unhappy with the group of Greek philosophers, and if there was a Roman philosopher who could suppress them, she would definitely agree with both hands and feet. What do you think about letting Faustus study with him for a while? Sulla said. Isn't he too young? Metella said. Although Levi looked very knowledgeable, she was still a little worried about his age. He is already the principal of a school, and we are not just letting him study with Levi alone. We can arrange other teachers for him, Sulla said. Metella thought about it and agreed. There should be no harm in studying with Levi. When Sulla told Levi about his plan, Levi only agreed to part of it. That is, he agreed to let a few doctors come to study, and the others would study with the medical battalion. As for Faustus, he was rejected because he was too young. Studying medicine requires experiencing many moments of death. If a child is exposed to death at a young age, it is easy to cause psychological trauma to the child. This is not what Livius said falsely. Psychology does say this. Sulla recalled that Livius' students seemed to be adults, not children. Therefore, he had to give up in the end. He didn't want his children to have any psychological trauma. In fact, it was not just Sulla. There were many people who wanted to study at the academy, but they were all rejected by Livius. What a joke. I asked you to sign up at the beginning, but you didn't sign up. Now the number of people is full, and you want to sign up. What do you think of me? Livius didn't think of spoiling them. In a villa in Rome, Philo said to a young man in Greek, Cicero, your speech just now was great. I have never seen such an outstanding student like you. I have only guided you for less than a month, and you have made such great progress. This is all because of your good guidance. I feel that I have made great progress recently. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have achieved such a great achievement. The young man said very modestly. His name is Cicero. He was born into a knight family. It is said that his ancestors were nobles. He was from the same hometown as Marius and admired Marius very much. Even in later generations, he was truly famous because he was the ancestor of Western lawyers. He served as a consul throughout his life and was later the only philosopher in Rome. Of course, many Greeks did not recognize this philosopher. Philo was not an ordinary person either. He was the famous director of the Academy of Plato in Greece. Because of Sulla's attack on Greek Athens and his brutal treatment of the Academy of Plato, Philo had to come to Rome for refuge. After learning of Philo's identity, Cicero desperately wanted to get his guidance and finally got what he wanted. You are really too modest. I have many students, but not many are as smart as you, and you are not only smart, but also wise, which is a noble quality that is more rare than intelligence. Believe me, you will definitely become a big man in the future. Philo's eyes revealed the light of wisdom. Cicero was so excited to receive such praise from Philo that he could hardly control himself. In his eyes, even the most learned people in Rome were not as good as Philo. To be recognized by him proved his ability. At this time, a slave came in. Master, Nasica Scipio wants to see you. What was he doing here? Philo frowned. But after all, he was a local boss in Rome, and he couldn't afford to offend him. Let him in. Soon Nasica Scipio hurried in. He looked quite angry, holding a roll of papyrus in his hand, and looked very upset. Hello, respected Principal Philo. Nasica saluted and said. Philo was the principal of the Academy of Plato, the highest institution of learning in the Mediterranean world. There were countless nobles in Rome who had studied there. Even Nasica had to respect him. Philo nodded. What are you doing here? Take a look at this. Is what's written on it true? Nasica handed him the papyrus and said. Philo took the papyrus and read it in confusion. Levi. This name is familiar. That's right. It's the man who claimed to have killed Nasica's father. Cells? What is this? Philo was so absorbed in reading it, and Nasica didn't bother him, but walked around anxiously. Cicero stood behind Philo and read it with great interest. After Philo finished reading this volume, Nasica asked the question again. Philo closed his eyes and thought for a while, then said, I'm not sure about this. I'm not sure. How is this possible? You are the director of Plato's Academy, Nasica said in shock. In the eyes of many people, Philo may be the most knowledgeable person in the entire Mediterranean or even the world. If even he doesn't know, who else can tell the difference? Philo explained helplessly, philosophy is all-encompassing, but many of the things in it cannot be proven true or false. The most typical example is Democritus' atomic theory. People can't see atoms at all. The excellence of this volume is that he further developed the atomic theory and developed concepts such as microorganisms and cells. Moreover, he pointed out the way to discover microorganisms and cells, which is to use the principle of light refraction. It can only be said that this is a very remarkable work. Chapter 125 Meeting. Hearing this, Nasica and Cicero were both shocked. Even Philo said that this was an amazing work, which shows how high Livy's level was. Nasica was anxious. How could Livy become a famous philosopher? Can't we prove that his theory is false? Nasica asked. He knew Nasica's little thoughts very well, but he didn't intend to expose him. It's difficult to prove that his theory is false, but it's not difficult to point out that some of the content is false, Philo said. Which content? Nasica asked hurriedly. For example, sunlight is composed of 7 colors of light. This is really hard to imagine. If you can find a prism, you may be able to prove his fallacy. In addition, there is the division of blood types. Some people did conduct blood transfusion experiments in the past. Some people survived and some died. Now I think it may be because of this reason, Philo said. Nasica's face turned a little dark. I asked you to find the mistakes, not to prove that he was right. There is also the pinhole imaging principle. These are probably the only things that can be proved, Philo said. I'll go find them now, Nasica said impatiently. He would never allow Levi, the murderer of his father, to become a great philosopher. Wait, I just said that he might be wrong or right. Once he is proven right, he might become the greatest philosopher in Rome. Philo said meaningfully. The greatest philosopher in Rome. This sentence shocked Nasica and Cicero. How could it be possible? It can even occupy a place in the entire history of Mediterranean philosophy. Philo seemed to be worried that it was not shocking enough and continued. Nasica felt dizzy. Fake. This must be fake. Cicero was so shocked that he couldn't speak. How could this be possible? He was only 17 years old. Socrates, Plato and Aristotle did not achieve such great achievements when they were their age. Could he surpass Socrates, Plato and Aristotle? But Cicero soon felt ridiculous for his absurd idea. How could this be possible? Nasica left in despair, but the name of Livy was firmly remembered in Cicero's heart. What a great young man! Perhaps your Roman philosophy will rise because of him. Philo couldn't help but praise, although Nasica tried his best to conceal it. Philo's evaluation of Livy still spread. The greatest philosopher in Rome. The philosophers in the history of the Mediterranean made countless Romans ecstatic. After so many years, Rome finally had a philosopher who could show off. Rome could call itself a civilized country in front of everyone, and even disdainfully call the surrounding tribes barbarians. But facing the Greeks, they never dared to say so, because Greece was the teacher of Roman civilization. Greece established colonies in Italy a long time ago and spread civilization to this land. The Roman religion is basically a fusion version of the Greek religion. Even the Romans regarded themselves as descendants of Troy. Some people said that Rome once sent a team to Greece to study law. Roman nobles were proud to study in Greece, and some Greeks even contemptuously called the Romans barbarians. Rome was very angry about this, but could not refute it. But now there is finally a philosopher recognized by the president of Plato's Academy. How can they not be ecstatic? For a while, Levi's name spread throughout Rome, and his name is no longer associated with the murderer who killed Scipio, but with the pride of the Romans. The great philosopher, finding that things have fermented almost, the envoy sent by Sulla hopes to prove the correctness of some doctrines in the Senate, and invites Philo, the president of Plato's Academy, to watch in person. Although some people are extremely obstructive, the envoy finally succeeded with the support of a large number of senators. When the rainbow-like light appeared in the Senate, the entire Senate was shocked. Philo was also shocked. I don't know how many people shouted miracles, and the envoy was triumphant. After returning home, Philo suffered from insomnia and finally made a decision, which was to go to Capua to meet Levi. He wanted to know what kind of young people could have such an understanding. In a manor outside Capua, a large number of slaves and Roman citizens were busy. Clean it up a little more. Today we have distinguished guests. There must not be a trace of dust. Dilius touched the table and then roared at a student. The student looked helpless. He had already wiped it 3 times. How high are your requirements? But in the end, he could only continue to touch the table, because the nobles and knights of Capua took the initiative to ask a large number of slaves to help. The Capua Academy moved half a month ahead of schedule. They were very satisfied with the new campus. Not only is the place large, but the floor heating has been built. The classroom is warm like spring, not cold at all. In addition, there is another exciting news, that is, Master Philo, the director of Plato Academy, intends to visit Levi, which makes them very excited. This is the director of Plato Academy, the most knowledgeable person in the entire Mediterranean world. How can they not feel honored to visit their own director? Levi was very calm about this. After all, he was from the future. He thought that his knowledge far surpassed that of people in this world, and he could easily come up with more than a dozen shocking theories. However, his arrival was still very welcome. Some things in medicine, such as anatomy and cesarean section, were really shocking. If he were to promote it, it might be criticized a lot, but it would be different with the name of Philo. His reputation was enough to overwhelm it all. Here they come. At this time, a cavalryman rode over and said. Dilius hurriedly led the students to line up to welcome them. In addition, there were a large number of nobles and knights. Some of them had studied in Plato's Academy when they were young and admired this master very much. Some wanted to take the opportunity to get to know this master and ask him some knowledge. It is said that Dean Philo's rhetoric is very good. If you can learn a few skills, it will be very helpful for your future career. Not long after, a convoy appeared in their sight, and a cavalry escorted the convoy slowly forward. This was the cavalry sent by Levi to welcome them. When the convoy stopped in front of them, an old man with white hair and beard and a kind face slowly got off a carriage. "This is Master Philo, the principal of Plato Academy." A cavalry captain introduced the two parties. "Hello, I am Lucius Pausius Livius, the principal of Capua Academy," Levi said with a smile on his face. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.